You have been taught to prepare for life instead of living it. They told you to wait until you are ready, wait until you are healed, wait until you have more money, more confidence, and more certainty. But while you keep preparing, the morning is passing, the people you love are changing, your body is aging, and the quiet moments you were supposed to enjoy are slipping through your hands. This is how life gets missed. Not because you failed, but because your mind was always 3 steps ahead, always planning, always fixing, always rehearsing a future that may never arrive. And Buddhism teaches that this is one of the deepest forms of suffering, because the present moment is the only place where life can actually touch you. Tonight, these lessons will bring you back from the future you keep chasing, back to this breath, this body, this day, and this simple life that is already asking to be lived. The pressure will soften, the noise in your mind will slow down, and you will begin to see that peace was never waiting at the end of perfect preparation. This is not just another audio to fall asleep to. This is a gentle awakening to the life you are missing right now. Are you ready? Let's begin. And maybe that is the strangest part of all. Most people do not realize they are missing their lives while it is happening. They think they are being responsible. They think they are preparing wisely. They think they are protecting themselves from future pain. But slowly, without noticing it, preparation becomes a full-time occupation, and presence quietly disappears. There is a silent sadness in realizing how many people have spent years getting ready to live, but never truly arriving inside their own lives. A person tells themselves they will finally relax after they make more money. Another says they will enjoy life after they heal emotionally. Someone else says they will start resting once things become less stressful. But life keeps moving while the mind keeps postponing peace. The sun still rises, people still age, parents grow older, children grow up, friendships change, bodies change, seasons pass, and through all of it, the mind keeps whispering, "Not yet." Buddhism teaches that the human mind has a deep addiction to elsewhere. It constantly escapes the present moment by moving toward the future. The mind believes salvation exists in the next achievement, the next plan, the next version of yourself. But this endless preparation often hides something much deeper than responsibility. It hides fear. Because if you are always preparing, you never have to fully face your life as it is right now. Many people spend their entire lives emotionally packing bags for a future they never enter. They prepare for conversations that never happen. They rehearse disasters that never arrive. They study every possible outcome before taking a simple step forward. They delay joy until they feel more deserving of it. They delay rest until they feel exhausted enough to earn it. They delay love until they become more perfect. And slowly, the present moment becomes nothing more than a waiting room. That is one of the greatest tragedies of the human experience. A person can survive for decades without ever truly feeling alive. The Buddhist teachers often spoke about the restless monkey mind, a mind that swings endlessly from branch to branch, never staying still long enough to experience reality directly. One moment it is replaying the past, the next moment it is controlling the future. But very rarely is it simply here. And this creates a strange kind of suffering because the body always lives in the present, but the mind refuses to join it. You can see this everywhere. Someone drinks coffee while thinking about tomorrow's problems. Someone sits with family while mentally answering emails. Someone takes a walk while trapped in anxiety about things that have not happened. The body is here, but the person is somewhere else entirely. Over-preparing often feels productive, but many times it is simply fear wearing responsible clothing. The mind tells you that if you think hard enough, plan carefully enough, or prepare enough scenarios, you can finally avoid uncertainty. But uncertainty is woven into life itself. No amount of mental rehearsal can remove the fragile nature of being human. You can prepare for a storm and still get wet. You can prepare for loss and still feel grief. You can prepare for aging and still feel fear when you see wrinkles appear. Life has never promised control. It only offers participation. This is why Buddhism places so much emphasis on awareness. Not because awareness removes difficulty, but because awareness reconnects you to reality before your entire life disappears inside mental noise. There are people who have spent years preparing to become someone worthy of living. They tell themselves, once I lose weight, then I will enjoy myself. Once I become successful, then I will relax. Once I finally heal completely, then I will allow myself to love and be loved. But the future version of themselves keeps moving farther away like the horizon. The problem is not growth. Buddhism does not reject growth. The problem is using self-improvement as a condition for being fully alive now. Because life does not begin after perfection. A flower does not wait until it becomes flawless before it blooms. A sunset does not apologize for being temporary. A child does not postpone laughter until they become wise. Only the human mind creates this endless negotiation with existence. I will allow myself peace later. I will allow myself happiness later. I will allow myself to live later. And later becomes another year, then another decade. There are people who spent their healthiest years preparing for a future that never came. Some were so busy building security that they forgot to feel the warmth of ordinary mornings. Some were so focused on avoiding mistakes that they never experienced adventure. Some were so afraid of heartbreak that they never fully opened their hearts at all. Preparation became a hiding place, and maybe that sentence hurts because part of you already knows it is true. Constant preparation can feel safe because planning creates the illusion of distance from pain. If you are always organizing, analyzing, studying, and rehearsing, you never have to fully surrender to uncertainty. But surrender is part of being alive. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering increases when we fight reality instead of meeting it directly. The present moment is uncomfortable for many people because it contains things they cannot control. Silence reveals loneliness. Stillness reveals anxiety. Rest reveals exhaustion that distractions were hiding. So instead of staying present, the mind escapes into future planning. That is why some people cannot sit quietly for even 5 minutes without reaching for their phone, creating another task, or worrying about tomorrow. Stillness threatens the identity that survives through constant movement. But presence begins exactly there, right in the middle of ordinary life, right in the middle of unfinished tasks, right in the middle of uncertainty. The Buddha did not teach people to wait for perfect conditions before becoming peaceful. He taught them to wake up inside imperfect conditions. That changes everything. Because suddenly peace is no longer dependent on life becoming easier. Peace becomes possible now, not because problems disappear, but because attention finally returns to what is real. Many people are physically exhausted not from work itself, but from mentally living in the future all day long. The body carries the stress of imagined conversations. The nervous system reacts to possible disasters as if they are already happening. A person lies in bed preparing for tomorrow while completely missing the fact that they are alive tonight, and this creates a painful contradiction. The more someone tries to secure themselves emotionally through preparation, the more disconnected they become from life itself. There is a reason why deeply present people often seem calmer even when life is difficult. Presence removes the extra suffering created by mental resistance. When you are truly present, you deal with one moment at a time instead of carrying 50 imaginary futures at once. A Buddhist monk sweeping the floor is simply sweeping the floor, not mentally building 10 different futures while holding a broom, not rehearsing arguments while washing dishes, not postponing peace until the weekend, just sweeping, just breathing, just living. This sounds simple, but most people have forgotten how to do it. Modern life rewards distraction. It rewards busyness. It praises exhaustion as importance. People brag about how stressed they are, as if constant pressure proves value. But many of these people are quietly disconnected from themselves. They do not remember the last peaceful meal they ate without multitasking. They do not remember the last walk they took without mental noise. They do not remember the last conversation where they were fully listening instead of preparing their next response. The mind becomes addicted to preparation because preparation creates temporary psychological comfort. It feels like progress. It feels like control. But often it is just avoidance. A person says they are planning for the future, but really they are avoiding the vulnerability of fully entering the present. Because presence asks something difficult from you. It asks you to stop running. It asks you to feel your life directly. It asks you to accept that no amount of preparation can remove the uncertainty of being human. And strangely, that acceptance creates freedom. Not the freedom of controlling everything, but the freedom of no longer carrying the impossible burden of trying to. There is wisdom in preparing wisely. Buddhism does not teach recklessness. It teaches balance. You can save money without worshipping fear. You can make plans without emotionally living inside tomorrow. You can prepare for the future while still inhabiting today. That is the middle path. The problem begins when preparation becomes your identity, when every moment becomes another attempt to finally earn permission to exist peacefully. Some people cannot enjoy rest because they always feel behind. Some cannot enjoy success because they immediately create another future problem to solve. Some cannot enjoy love because they are busy preparing for abandonment. This is what happens when the mind becomes trapped in survival mode for too long. It forgets how to arrive. And arrival is a spiritual act. To truly arrive in a moment means you stop demanding that reality become different before you allow yourself to be here. You stop treating life like a problem to solve. You stop treating every quiet moment as wasted productivity. You stop postponing your own existence. There are ordinary moments happening around you right now that will never happen again. A parent's voice, a friend's laugh, the way sunlight enters your room, the sound of rain late at night, your current age, your current body, this exact version of your life. One day, all of it will be gone, not to create fear, but clarity. Impermanence is one of the deepest teachings in Buddhism because it reminds you that life is not waiting. And if life is not waiting, why are you? Why keep delaying your presence until some imaginary future version of yourself finally feels complete enough to live? The truth is, nobody arrives at perfect readiness. Nobody reaches a point where fear disappears forever. Nobody controls every outcome. Life is entered through participation, not perfection. And sometimes the deepest healing begins the moment you stop trying to prepare endlessly and finally allow yourself to fully stand inside the life already unfolding around you. The tea does not taste better because you worried all morning. The sunset does not become more beautiful because you overthought your future. The people you love do not need a perfected version of you before they can feel your presence. They need you here, now, not mentally absent, not emotionally postponed, not trapped in tomorrow, just here, breathing, listening, living. And perhaps this is the real beginning of peace. Not becoming someone new, but finally stopping long enough to notice the life you already have. And once a person finally sees how much of their life has been lost inside endless preparation, another deeper truth slowly begins to appear. Many people are not only preparing for the future, they are emotionally worshipping a future version of themselves. They keep believing that the person they are becoming deserves love, peace, confidence, rest, and happiness more than the person they are right now. That is where another quiet form of suffering begins. There is a painful loneliness in constantly feeling like your real worth exists somewhere ahead of you. The mind creates an ideal future self, a wiser self, a more successful self, a more attractive self, a more healed self, a more disciplined self. And then life becomes a never-ending chase toward this imaginary identity. Every day turns into another attempt to finally become someone acceptable enough to deserve peace. But while you chase the person you hope to become, you slowly abandon the person you already are. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering comes from attachment. Most people think attachment only means becoming attached to money, relationships, or possessions. But one of the deepest attachments is attachment to identity. The mind becomes attached to an imagined future version of itself and starts rejecting the present version with quiet cruelty. This happens so subtly that many people do not even notice it. A person tells themselves, "When I finally become confident, then I will speak freely. When I finally become successful, then I will enjoy my life. When I finally heal emotionally, then I will allow myself to be loved. When I finally become disciplined enough, attractive enough, intelligent enough, spiritual enough, then I will finally rest." But the future self never fully arrives because the mind keeps moving the finish line. Even after success comes, another standard appears. Even after healing begins, another flaw becomes the focus. Even after growth happens, the mind whispers, "Still not enough." This is why some people achieve everything they once dreamed about and still feel internally restless. The problem was never the goal itself. The problem was the belief that peace could only exist after becoming someone else. The future self-trap convinces people that who they are today is merely a temporary inconvenience, something unfinished, something inadequate, something to tolerate until transformation finally happens. But when you live this way for years, you stop forming a relationship with your present self altogether. You stop listening to yourself compassionately. You stop honoring your current emotions. You stop respecting your own humanity. You become a project instead of a person. And there is something deeply exhausting about always feeling like you must upgrade yourself before you deserve to fully exist. The Buddhist path does not reject growth. Growth is natural. Trees grow, seasons change, human beings evolve. But Buddhism warns against turning self-improvement into self-rejection, because there is a major difference between growing gently and constantly living at war with yourself. Many people cannot feel peace because every moment has become another self-evaluation. Am I successful enough? Am I productive enough? Am I healing fast enough? Am I spiritual enough? Am I attractive enough? Am I worthy yet? And the mind keeps scanning itself for defects the way a nervous person checks a mirror before entering a room. This creates a life filled with hidden tension because the person never actually arrives in the present moment. They are too busy trying to escape themselves. One of the saddest things about the future self-trap is that it often disguises itself as motivation. Society praises people who constantly optimize themselves, improve yourself, fix yourself, reinvent yourself, become better, become stronger, become more desirable, become more impressive. And while growth can be beautiful, many people secretly use self-improvement to avoid self-acceptance. They believe if they can just perfect themselves enough, they will finally stop feeling unworthy. But worthiness cannot be earned through endless self-repair. The future self-trap is built on the illusion that love and peace are rewards waiting at the end of transformation. Buddhism teaches something radically different. It teaches that awakening begins when you stop running away from the life and self already here. That does not mean becoming passive. It means you stop withholding compassion from yourself until you become ideal. There are people who speak kindly to everyone except themselves. People who forgive others while internally punishing their own imperfections every single day. People who allow everyone else to be human while demanding perfection from themselves before they can rest. And slowly, the relationship they have with themselves becomes harsh, conditional, and emotionally cold. The future self becomes a form of psychological escape. Instead of fully inhabiting today, the mind escapes into fantasies about who it might become tomorrow. This is why some people are addicted to self-help content but rarely feel peaceful. They keep consuming new methods, new routines, new philosophies, new identities, hoping the next transformation will finally remove their inner discomfort. But inner discomfort cannot heal through endless self-abandonment. A person may spend years trying to become better while secretly believing their current self is unlovable. That belief poisons every achievement. Even success becomes emotionally empty when it is built on self-rejection. The Buddha often spoke about the suffering created by craving. Most people think craving only means wanting material things, but craving can also mean craving a different self, wanting to become someone else so badly that you stop seeing the sacredness of the person already breathing here. This creates a very painful emotional split. One part of you becomes the judge. The other part becomes the judged. One part constantly demands improvement. The other part constantly feels inadequate. And instead of inner peace, the mind becomes a courtroom, always evaluating, always criticizing, always preparing another version of yourself to chase. There are people who cannot enjoy simple moments because they are mentally comparing themselves to who they think they should already be. They sit at dinner while feeling behind in life. They spend time with loved ones while silently feeling like failures. They achieve milestones and immediately focus on what is still missing. Even rest becomes difficult because rest feels undeserved. This is the tragedy of living too attached to future identity. You lose contact with your own aliveness. You stop experiencing life directly because you are constantly measuring yourself against imagined perfection. The future self-trap also creates chronic dissatisfaction because the ego survives through incompleteness. The ego says, "Once I become this next version of myself, then everything will finally feel okay." But once that version arrives, the ego creates another one. It keeps the person psychologically running forever, like chasing the horizon. No matter how far you walk, it keeps moving. This is why Buddhism places such deep emphasis on awareness instead of identity construction. Awareness allows you to observe yourself without becoming trapped inside endless self-judgment. You begin noticing thoughts without obeying all of them. You begin seeing how often the mind postpones peace. You begin realizing how many years have been spent trying to become enough. And perhaps one of the most healing moments in life is when you finally stop asking, "When will I become worthy?" and start asking, "What if I already deserved compassion before becoming anyone else?" That question changes something deep inside the heart, because many people are carrying an invisible emotional burden. They are exhausted from trying to outrun themselves, always becoming, never arriving, always fixing, never resting, always comparing, never accepting. The present self becomes treated like a temporary embarrassment instead of a living human being deserving tenderness now. Some people even postpone relationships because they think they must become more polished first. They hide parts of themselves until they feel more impressive. They wait to be fully healed before allowing connection. But human beings were never meant to earn love through perfection. Real connection often begins when masks fall away, when performance softens, when someone stops trying so hard to appear complete. The future self-trap can also steal gratitude from ordinary life. A person becomes so focused on becoming more that they stop appreciating what already exists. They cannot enjoy their current home because they obsess over the future house. They cannot appreciate their current body because they are chasing a future body. They cannot appreciate their current chapter because they are emotionally living inside another season entirely. And while they wait for future happiness, present life quietly passes. Children grow older. Parents age. Friendships shift. Moments disappear forever. Buddhism reminds us constantly that impermanence touches everything, not to create fear, but to awaken attention. Because when you deeply understand impermanence, you stop treating today like a meaningless hallway leading somewhere more important. Today is life itself, not preparation for life, not rehearsal for life, not a temporary waiting room before life begins. This very moment matters. This version of you matters too, even unfinished, even uncertain, even flawed. The future self-trap also damages mental peace because it teaches the nervous system that safety only exists in becoming more successful, more admired, more healed, more accomplished, more spiritually advanced. But there will always be another level if your mind depends on achievement for inner permission to rest. This creates a hidden addiction to self-dissatisfaction, and modern culture often feeds this addiction constantly. Social media shows endless versions of people appearing happier, richer, wiser, more attractive, more disciplined. The mind compares itself constantly and concludes that peace belongs to other people who are somehow further ahead. But comparison destroys presence. The moment you compare your current life to an imagined superior version, gratitude disappears. The mind leaves reality and enters deficiency. Buddhist wisdom calls people back from this trap by teaching non-attachment to identity. You are not a fixed project to perfect forever. You are a living, changing human experience. And life becomes much softer when you stop treating yourself like a machine under constant evaluation. There is tremendous healing in allowing yourself to simply be a person sometimes, not a performance, not a future masterpiece, not a self-improvement project, just a human being breathing through another ordinary day. Some of the most peaceful people are not those who became perfect. They are those who stopped fighting themselves every moment. They still grow, they still learn, they still evolve, but their growth no longer comes from hatred toward who they are now. It comes from care. There is a major spiritual difference between saying, "I want to grow because I hate myself," and saying, "I want to grow because I love myself enough to care for my life." One creates suffering, the other creates peace. The future self-trap also prevents people from seeing how much beauty already exists within them now. A person may already be kind but only focus on their flaws, already resilient but only see weakness, already worthy of love but only notice imperfection. The mind becomes blind to present goodness because it is obsessed with future completion. And this blindness creates emotional starvation. No achievement ever feels sufficient because the inner relationship remains wounded. Buddhism gently teaches that freedom begins when awareness returns to this moment without demanding that reality become different first. That includes your relationship with yourself. You do not need to become another person before deserving your own compassion. You do not need to earn rest through exhaustion. You do not need to become spiritually flawless before allowing yourself peace. You do not need to wait for perfection before fully entering your own life. The person you are right now is not a mistake standing in the way of your future self. This version of you is life itself unfolding, messy, changing, learning, hurting sometimes, healing slowly, trying again, breathing through uncertainty like every human being who has ever lived. And perhaps true presence begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself in pursuit of who you think you should become. Because one day you may finally realize something deeply freeing. The future version of yourself you have been chasing was never asking you to hate who you are now. It was only asking you to finally come home to yourself completely. Not tomorrow, not after transformation, now. And maybe this is where many people finally begin to understand something life-changing. Peace does not appear the moment everything becomes perfect. Peace appears the moment you stop postponing your presence until perfection arrives. Because if your mind always says, "I will finally live when life changes," then your entire existence becomes emotionally delayed. And the frightening part is that life may keep changing forever. There is a quiet ache that comes from always feeling emotionally parked outside your own life. A person waits to feel successful before relaxing. Another waits to feel fully healed before opening their heart. Someone else waits for certainty before taking action. Many people spend years believing arrival is something that happens after external change, after more money, after the right relationship, after the fear disappears, after the future finally becomes safe enough to inhabit. But Buddhism teaches a completely different kind of arrival. It teaches that true arrival happens internally before circumstances fully change. This is one of the deepest spiritual arts a human being can learn. To breathe before life becomes easier, to soften before the answers appear, to feel present before certainty arrives. Most people unknowingly build their emotional life on conditions. I will rest when the stress is over. I will feel worthy when I become successful. I will feel peaceful when the uncertainty disappears. I will feel complete when someone finally loves me. But conditions never end. Life keeps moving from one challenge to another. One desire becomes fulfilled and another immediately appears. The mind keeps creating new emotional requirements before allowing itself to finally settle. This is why some people reach goals they chased for years and still cannot relax. They trained their nervous system to believe peace only exists somewhere ahead. So even after success arrives, the body remains emotionally restless. Buddhism teaches that suffering deepens when the mind constantly demands that reality become different before allowing presence. That teaching changes everything because it reveals a hidden truth. The problem is not only external difficulty. The problem is the inner habit of withholding life from yourself until circumstances improve. Some people postpone joy for decades without realizing it. They wake up every day emotionally waiting for enough money, waiting for enough healing, waiting for enough confidence, waiting for enough validation, waiting for life to finally grant them permission to arrive. But existence does not work that way. Life is not a doorway you enter after solving every problem. Life is happening while the problems exist. The Buddhist art of arriving means learning to inhabit your life before everything becomes ideal. That does not mean pretending pain is not real. It means refusing to abandon yourself while pain exists. This is where many people misunderstand presence. They think presence means feeling calm all the time. But true presence means being willing to fully meet reality without emotionally escaping every uncomfortable moment. You can be uncertain and still present. You can be healing and still present. You can be grieving and still present. You can be building your future and still fully inhabit today. Presence is not perfection, it is participation. A person can sit beside someone they love and still miss the entire moment because their mind is obsessed with future worries. Another person can walk through a difficult season and still feel deeply alive because they are actually here for their own experience. That difference matters. Buddhism teaches that awareness transforms ordinary existence into something sacred. Drinking tea becomes enough. Walking becomes enough. Listening becomes enough. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because attention finally returns to reality itself. Many people live as if their current chapter is just an obstacle between them and real life. They treat this season as temporary suffering that must simply be survived until better days arrive. But one day they suddenly realize years disappeared while they were emotionally absent. The struggle with always waiting for life to change is that the mind becomes addicted to emotional postponement. Even when things improve, the habit continues. A person finally earns more money, but now they worry about losing it. A person finally finds love, but now they fear abandonment. A person finally heals one wound, but now they obsess over another insecurity. The external conditions change, but the internal habit of postponing peace remains untouched. That is why Buddhism focuses so deeply on the state of the mind rather than external achievement alone. Because without inner presence, even beautiful experiences become difficult to feel fully. There are people living inside dream situations who still feel emotionally disconnected from their own lives. Not because they are ungrateful, but because their minds never learned how to arrive. The future became their permanent residence, and the present became something they passed through without noticing. The Buddhist art of arriving asks a radically simple question. What if this moment deserves your full presence before your life completely changes? What if your current breath matters now? What if this ordinary morning matters now? What if your unfinished life still deserves your attention now? Most people think they are waiting for external certainty, but often they are waiting for emotional permission. Permission to relax, permission to stop proving themselves, permission to enjoy simple things, permission to be enough without performing constantly. But the longer you postpone that permission, the harder it becomes to access peace at all. Because the nervous system adapts to chronic striving, it begins to believe tension is normal. Rest starts feeling unfamiliar. Stillness starts feeling unsafe. Many people become uncomfortable in peaceful moments because they have spent years emotionally surviving instead of arriving. The body keeps carrying urgency long after the emergency is gone. This is why some people cannot enjoy vacations, weekends, or quiet evenings. Their minds remain trapped in future movement. They sit in beautiful places while mentally preparing for tomorrow. And slowly, life becomes a blur of missed moments. Buddhist monks often train themselves to become fully attentive to very small experiences. The feeling of water touching the hands, the sound of footsteps, the sensation of breathing, the warmth of sunlight. To many people this seems unnecessary or overly simple, but there is deep wisdom hidden there. Attention is life. Where your attention goes, your existence goes. If your attention permanently lives in imagined futures, then your life will always feel emotionally distant. Many people are physically alive, but psychologically somewhere else entirely. The art of arriving means calling your attention back home, back to the body, back to the room you are sitting in, back to the meal in front of you, back to the conversation happening now instead of the future conversation you are rehearsing, back to your actual life. There is something deeply healing about no longer treating the present moment like a temporary inconvenience. The mind often believes that arrival will happen automatically after external success, but presence is not something success gives you. Presence is something you practice before success arrives. Otherwise, success simply becomes another thing you experience while distracted. The same is true for healing. Many people believe they must completely heal before they can start living fully. But healing itself often happens through participation in life, not isolation from it. A person laughs while still carrying grief. A person loves while still healing old wounds. A person moves forward while still uncertain. This is part of being human. Buddhism does not ask people to become emotionally flawless before awakening. It asks them to stop running from reality long enough to see clearly. And clarity changes how suffering feels. When you stop demanding that life become perfect before you allow yourself to be present, something softens inside you. You stop fighting existence every moment. You stop treating uncertainty as proof that peace is impossible. You stop postponing your humanity. There are people who cannot enjoy their current age because they are grieving another version of themselves. Too old to feel young again, too young to feel accomplished enough, too focused on who they used to be or who they should become. And in the middle of this comparison, they lose contact with the person they actually are. The Buddhist art of arriving teaches radical intimacy with the present self, not the perfected self, not the future self. This self, breathing here, living here, trying here. This changes relationships too. Many people wait to become emotionally perfect before allowing themselves connection. They believe they must become more interesting, more healed, more complete first. But some of the deepest human moments happen when people allow themselves to be seen before they feel fully ready. Life rarely pauses until your fears disappear. The child still wants your attention while you are anxious. The friend still wants your presence while you are uncertain. The sunset still appears while your future remains unresolved. Reality keeps unfolding whether your mind is prepared or not. And there is sorrow in constantly missing what is beautiful because you are emotionally waiting for certainty first. Buddhism reminds people that certainty itself is temporary. Even stable seasons eventually change. Even healthy bodies age. Even beautiful relationships shift with time. Trying to emotionally arrive only after certainty appears is impossible because life itself remains fluid. This is why inner groundedness matters more than external guarantees. A tree survives storms not because the sky remains calm forever, but because its roots know how to stay connected to the earth. Presence creates those roots inside the human spirit. A deeply present person still experiences fear, sadness, and uncertainty, but they no longer abandon themselves every time discomfort appears. They remain emotionally available to their own lives. That is rare. Many people disappear psychologically whenever life becomes difficult. They retreat into overthinking, future obsession, distraction, emotional numbness, or endless productivity. Presence asks something much more courageous: to stay, to remain awake inside your own existence, to feel this moment honestly without immediately escaping it. And strangely, this honesty creates more peace than endless mental control ever could. Because control is exhausting, the mind constantly scanning for certainty becomes tired. The body constantly bracing for future outcomes becomes tense. The spirit constantly delaying peace becomes emotionally hungry. Arrival interrupts this cycle. Arrival says, "This moment belongs to my life too." Even before success, even before healing, even before certainty. This is one of the most difficult lessons for modern people because society trains human beings to constantly chase the next milestone. Childhood prepares for adulthood. Adulthood prepares for retirement. One achievement prepares for another achievement. People become experts at reaching goals, but strangers to presence. Some do not know how to simply sit quietly without trying to improve themselves. Some do not know how to enjoy a meal without multitasking. Some do not know how to walk without mentally rushing ahead. And because of this, ordinary life begins to feel emotionally empty. Not because ordinary life lacks beauty, but because attention has disappeared from it. The Buddhist path slowly restores that attention. It teaches people how to arrive before conditions become ideal, how to breathe before fear disappears, how to love before certainty arrives, how to feel grateful before life becomes perfect. And this gratitude is not denial, it is awareness. Awareness that life is happening now, not later, not after transformation, now. There is also deep freedom in realizing you do not need to solve your entire future to inhabit today. Many people carry the impossible burden of trying to mentally control every possible outcome before allowing themselves peace. But life has never offered that kind of guarantee. The future has always been uncertain. And yet, birds still sing, rain still falls, people still laugh, children still play, love still appears unexpectedly, life still unfolds. The Buddhist art of arriving teaches that peace is not found through total control of tomorrow. Peace is found through full participation in today. And perhaps this is what your heart has been searching for all along. Not another future identity, not another destination, not another condition to finally satisfy, but the ability to fully enter your own life before it passes you by. Because one day you may realize that the moments you kept postponing your presence for were actually the moments that mattered most. The ordinary mornings, the tired evenings, the conversations you almost rushed through, the quiet breaths you barely noticed, the unfinished version of yourself that was already worthy of being fully alive. And maybe true awakening begins right there, the moment you stop waiting for life to change before you finally allow yourself to arrive inside it completely. And once you begin to understand the art of arriving before life changes, another hidden pattern becomes easier to see. Many people are not only waiting for life to become better before they arrive, they are trying to plan so perfectly that life will never surprise them again. They believe if they think enough, prepare enough, and calculate enough, they can finally become safe from uncertainty. But life cannot be fully controlled. It can only be met. There is a quiet fear inside the person who cannot stop planning. On the outside, they may look responsible, careful, and wise. But deep inside, something is shaking, something is whispering, "If I do not prepare for every possible problem, something bad will happen, and I will not survive it." So the mind keeps working. It keeps predicting. It keeps organizing invisible disasters. It keeps building mental walls against a future that has not arrived. This is how planning becomes a hiding place. At first, planning looks harmless. You make a list. You think about what could go wrong. You prepare for tomorrow. You try to make good decisions. There is nothing wrong with this. Buddhism does not teach carelessness. It does not tell you to walk into life with closed eyes and call it peace. Wisdom includes preparation. If it may rain, you carry an umbrella. If you have work to do, you arrange your time. If you have responsibilities, you pay attention to them. But there is a point where planning stops being wisdom and becomes fear wearing a neat coat. You can feel the difference in the body. Wise planning brings clarity. Fearful planning brings tension. Wise planning helps you take one useful step. Fearful planning makes you rehearse 10 painful futures. Wise planning ends when the next right action is clear. Fearful planning never ends, because fear always finds another thing to worry about. This is the illusion that more planning means more safety. The mind says, if I can just think through every detail, I will finally feel secure. But the more it plans, the more unsafe it often feels. Because every plan opens the door to another possibility. Every possibility creates another fear. Every fear demands another plan. Before long, the person is not living anymore. They are managing an invisible emergency that exists mostly in their own mind. Buddhism teaches that suffering often begins when we confuse thought with reality. A thought appears, and we believe it completely. A worry appears, and the body reacts as if the danger is already here. The mind says, "What if this happens?" And suddenly the heart tightens, the stomach turns, the shoulders rise, and the breath becomes shallow. Nothing has happened yet, but the body is already living inside the imagined pain. This is why planning can become so exhausting. You are not only thinking about the future, you are emotionally living through it again and again. Someone prepares for failure before they even begin. Someone prepares for rejection before anyone has rejected them. Someone prepares for loss while still holding what they love. Someone prepares for embarrassment before stepping into the room. And because the body cannot always tell the difference between a real event and a deeply believed mental story, the person becomes tired from surviving things that have not happened. This is not safety. This is self-created suffering. The Buddha taught that the mind is powerful, but an untrained mind can become its own prison. It can take one simple situation and turn it into 1,000 possible problems. It can take one uncertain moment and cover it with fear. It can take one ordinary day and fill it with imaginary disasters. And the person believes they are being careful, when really they are being pulled away from direct experience. Direct experience is simple. The breath is here. The body is here. The room is here. The task in front of you is here. But the anxious mind does not want simple reality. It wants control. It wants guarantees. It wants to know that nothing will hurt, nothing will fail, nothing will change, and nothing will disappoint. But life has never offered such a contract. This is where Buddhist presence becomes powerful. Presence does not promise that nothing difficult will happen. Presence teaches you that you can meet what happens without abandoning yourself before it arrives. That is a different kind of safety. Most people are searching for safety in prediction. Buddhism points towards safety in awareness. Prediction says, I must know what will happen before I can relax. Awareness says, I can return to myself even when I do not know. Prediction depends on controlling the world. Awareness depends on staying awake inside your own mind. And this is why awareness is more stable than planning alone. Plans break. People change, weather shifts, bodies age, money comes and goes, relationships move through seasons, good intentions meet unexpected obstacles. Even the most careful person cannot plan away impermanence. But awareness can remain with you through change, breath can remain available, attention can return, wisdom can respond, compassion can soften the heart. These are inner resources, and they matter more than the illusion of total control. Many people do not truly trust themselves, so they overplan. They do not believe they can handle discomfort if it comes. They do not believe they can recover from mistakes. They do not believe they can respond wisely in the moment, so they try to prepare for every possible situation ahead of time. Beneath all that planning is a hidden belief. I am not safe unless I control everything first. But no human being can control everything first. This belief creates a life of constant inner pressure. The person is always trying to be ahead of life, ahead of pain, ahead of conflict, ahead of uncertainty, ahead of disappointment. But life cannot be outrun. Sooner or later, every person must meet a moment they did not prepare for. A phone call, a change, a loss, a delay, a truth, a silence, a door that closes, a door that opens before they feel ready. And in those moments, what matters most is not how many fears they rehearsed. What matters is whether they can stay present enough to respond. Planning is useful when it serves life. Planning becomes suffering when life becomes a servant to planning. You can see this in the person who spends so much time preparing for a conversation that they never speak honestly when the moment comes. They have rehearsed every sentence, every reaction, every possible reply. But when they finally face the person, the conversation feels stiff, controlled, and disconnected. Why? Because they are not truly listening. They are performing a plan. You can see it in the person who plans a perfect future with someone they love, but misses the tenderness of the relationship today. They are thinking about where things are going, whether it will last, what could go wrong, how to secure it, how to protect themselves. Meanwhile, the other person is sitting right there, waiting to be felt, heard, and seen. You can see it in the person who prepares endlessly for success, but cannot enjoy the small progress happening now. Their eyes are always on the next problem. Their mind is always correcting, comparing, improving, calculating. Nothing is enough because everything is only a step towards something else. This kind of planning slowly removes the soul from life. Buddhism brings us back to the ordinary moment, because the ordinary moment is where reality lives. Not in the mental movie of what could happen. Not in the imagined disaster. Not in the perfect outcome. Reality is here, before the mind covers it with fear. And when you return to what is here, you often discover that this moment is much more manageable than the future you were fighting in your head. Right now, maybe you only need to breathe. Right now, maybe you only need to send one message. Right now, maybe you only need to wash the cup, eat the meal, take the walk, rest the body, or tell the truth. The mind makes life heavy by forcing you to carry the next 10 years inside this one breath. But this breath was never meant to carry 10 years. This breath was meant to be breathed. There is deep mercy in understanding this. You do not need to solve your whole life today. You do not need to predict every challenge before it appears. You do not need to become perfectly prepared before you are allowed to take the next step. You are allowed to meet life in pieces. You are allowed to respond moment by moment. You are allowed to be human, not a machine that calculates every danger before moving. The illusion that more planning means more safety often begins early in life. Some people learned that mistakes were punished. Some learned that love was unstable. Some learned that being unprepared led to shame. Some grew up in environments where they had to watch people's moods carefully to avoid conflict. So the mind became a guard. It learned to scan ahead. It learned to prepare for emotional weather before the storm began. That kind of planning may have once helped a person survive, but what helps you survive in one season can become the very thing that keeps you from living in another. A child who had to stay alert may grow into an adult who cannot relax. A person who was once betrayed may prepare for betrayal in every relationship. A person who once failed publicly may overplan every future step to avoid shame. The past quietly teaches the mind that uncertainty is dangerous. Buddhism does not shame this. It brings compassion to it. The mind is not your enemy. It is trying to protect you. The problem is that it sometimes protects you so intensely that it blocks you from intimacy, spontaneity, joy, and peace. It builds a wall so strong that even beauty cannot enter. This is why awareness must be gentle. You do not force the mind to stop planning. You begin by noticing when planning has become fear. You pause and ask, is this useful preparation, or am I trying to escape uncertainty? That one question can open a door. Useful preparation has an endpoint. Fear-driven preparation keeps demanding more. Useful preparation brings you back to action. Fear-driven preparation traps you in thought. Useful preparation respects reality. Fear-driven preparation tries to defeat impermanence. Useful preparation says, here is what I can do. Fear-driven preparation says, I must make sure nothing painful ever happens. And that final demand is impossible. No amount of planning can promise a life without pain, but presence can help you suffer less when pain comes. It can help you stop adding fear before the pain arrives, resistance while it is here, and bitterness after it leaves. This is where Buddhism becomes deeply practical. It teaches you to separate the first arrow from the second arrow. The first arrow is what life brings: a problem, a disappointment, a delay, a mistake. The second arrow is what the mind adds. This should not be happening. I cannot handle this. My life is ruined. What if it gets worse? What will people think? Why is this always me? Planning often becomes a way of trying to avoid every first arrow. But because first arrows are part of human life, the attempt becomes endless. Presence teaches you to reduce the second arrow. It teaches you to meet what comes without multiplying pain through panic, resistance, and mental exaggeration. This does not make you weak. It makes you wiser. There is a strength in saying, I do not know what will happen, but I can stay with myself. There is courage in saying, I will prepare what I can, but I will not worship control. There is freedom in saying, I will not sacrifice today's peace to fight tomorrow's shadow. Many people do not realize that over-planning is often a form of bargaining with life. The mind says, if I worry enough, maybe I will be spared. If I prepare enough, maybe nothing will hurt me. If I think through every outcome, maybe uncertainty will disappear. But life does not respond to worry like a payment. Worry does not purchase protection. Fear does not earn safety. Overthinking does not guarantee wisdom. Sometimes it only drains the energy you need to respond well when the real moment arrives. This is why people who over-prepare often feel strangely unprepared when life actually happens. They spent so much energy rehearsing possibilities that they have little calm left for reality. Their minds are tired before the event begins. Their bodies are already tense. Their emotions are already overloaded. They are not meeting life fresh. They are meeting it exhausted from imagined versions of it. Buddhist presence restores freshness. It allows you to meet this moment without dragging every imagined outcome into it. It allows you to see what is actually happening, not only what you fear might happen. It allows you to respond to reality instead of reacting to mental projections, and that is a powerful difference. A person who is present can notice, this is fear. They do not need to become the fear. They can notice, this is uncertainty. They do not need to turn uncertainty into disaster. They can notice, this is planning. They do not need to let planning become obsession. This simple noticing creates space, and in that space, freedom begins. Without awareness, the mind controls you. With awareness, you can relate to the mind differently. You can thank it for trying to protect you, then gently return to now. You can say, I hear you, but we do not need to. Solve everything tonight. You can say, we have prepared enough for this moment. You can say, the next step is enough. This is not childish comfort. This is deep spiritual discipline. It takes practice to stop obeying every fearful thought. It takes courage to let the future remain partly unknown. It takes humility to admit that control has limits, and it takes trust to keep walking anyway. Trust does not mean believing everything will go your way. Trust means believing you can remain awake, kind, and steady even when life moves differently than planned. That kind of trust is built through presence. Every time you return to the breath, you are teaching the nervous system that now is survivable. Every time you complete one task without mentally rushing into 10 others, you are training attention. Every time you let yourself rest without earning it through panic, you are breaking the addiction to fear. Every time you accept a small uncertainty without trying to crush it immediately, you are becoming freer. The path is not dramatic. It is quiet. It happens in simple moments. You notice yourself overthinking and you come back to the body. You notice yourself trying to control someone's reaction and you come back to honest speech. You notice yourself preparing for pain and you come back to what is actually true right now. This is how the illusion weakens, not through one grand realization, but through repeated returns. The mind may still plan. That is okay. The goal is not to destroy planning. The goal is to stop turning planning into a false god. Plans can guide you, but they cannot save you from being human. Schedules can support you, but they cannot remove impermanence. Preparation can help, but it cannot replace presence. There is a peace that comes when you finally stop demanding certainty from a world built on change. You begin to live more honestly. You still prepare, but you do not disappear into preparation. You still care, but you do not confuse care with control. You still think about tomorrow, but you do not abandon today. This is maturity. This is balance. This is the middle path. Because when you stop believing that more planning always means more safety, you discover a different kind of safety. The safety of being rooted in yourself, the safety of breathing through uncertainty, the safety of meeting life directly instead of hiding behind endless mental rehearsal. And maybe this is what you have been needing all along, not a perfect plan, not a guaranteed future, not a mind that can predict everything, but the quiet strength to stand inside this unfinished moment and say, I am here. I do not know everything. I cannot control everything, but I can meet this breath. I can take this step. I can live this day. That is where real life begins again. Not in the plan, not in the prediction, not in the fantasy of perfect safety, but here, in the uncertain, breathing, ordinary moment that has been waiting for you to return. And once you stop believing that more planning can make life perfectly safe, another quiet illusion begins to show itself. It is the belief that there will be a perfect moment to finally begin. A moment when fear is gone, the timing is right, the heart is calm, the money is enough, the confidence is strong, and life finally opens a clean door with no risk behind it. But that moment rarely comes. And even when it does, the mind often finds another reason to wait. This is how someday becomes a beautiful prison. There is a deep sadness in always waiting for the right time, because while the mind keeps searching for a perfect opening, life keeps offering imperfect ones. A person says, someday I will rest. Another says, someday I will tell them how I feel. Someone else says, someday I will start again. And on the surface, it sounds hopeful, it sounds patient, it sounds wise. But sometimes, hidden underneath that word is craving. Not craving for pleasure, not craving for luxury, not craving for attention, but craving for a version of life that finally feels safe enough to enter. Buddhism teaches that attachment is not only holding tightly to what you already have. Attachment can also mean clinging to what has not happened yet. It can mean holding your breath for a future moment so tightly that you cannot breathe inside the present one. That is what happens when someday becomes the place where you store your happiness. Someday when I am ready. Someday when I am better. Someday when people understand me. Someday when I have enough money. Someday when life stops being complicated. But life has always been complicated. Even beautiful things arrive with uncertainty. Even love comes with vulnerability. Even success comes with pressure. Even healing comes with tender places that still ache. So if you wait for a moment with no fear, no doubt, no imperfection, and no risk, you may wait so long that your life quietly passes by. The perfect moment is often just the mind's way of avoiding the real moment. And the real moment is almost always unfinished. It has noise in it. It has uncertainty in it. It has tiredness in it. It has bills, emotions, responsibilities, and unanswered questions. But it is still life. It is still the only place where anything real can begin. Buddhism does not ask you to wait until the mud disappears before walking the path. The lotus itself grows from mud. This is one of the most powerful symbols in Buddhist thought, because it reminds us that awakening does not require perfect conditions. Beauty can rise from difficulty. Clarity can begin inside confusion. Peace can be practiced even when life is not clean, easy, or fully arranged. Many people do not begin because they are secretly waiting for life to feel pure. They want a perfect first step, a perfect mood, a perfect schedule, a perfect sign. But life does not usually hand you perfection before movement. Often, movement is what reveals the path. You take one imperfect step, and then the next step becomes clearer. You speak with a shaking voice, and then courage begins to grow. You begin before feeling ready, and then readiness slowly follows. This is why waiting can become so dangerous. It disguises itself as wisdom, but sometimes it is fear dressed in patient language. I am just waiting for the right time. I am just being careful. I am just making sure everything is aligned. Sometimes that is true. There are moments when waiting is wise, but there are also moments when waiting is avoidance. The difference is not always in the action. It is in the energy behind it. Wise waiting feels spacious. Fearful waiting feels tight. Wise waiting keeps you awake. Fearful waiting makes you numb. Wise waiting listens to life. Fearful waiting hides from it. Wise waiting has patience. Fearful waiting has paralysis. When Buddhism speaks about craving, it points to the restless thirst of the mind. The mind keeps saying, not this, something else, not now, later, not here, somewhere else. This thirst is what pulls a person away from peace, and someday can become one of the mind's most spiritual-looking cravings, because it does not always look greedy. It may look responsible, it may look ambitious, it may look humble, but inside there is still a refusal to fully inhabit now. The mind says, I cannot be peaceful in this life yet. I need another life first. But Buddhism keeps calling you back, not to a fantasy, not to a perfect future, back to the breath, back to the body, back to the moment that is already here. This does not mean you stop having dreams. It does not mean you stop preparing for good things. It does not mean you abandon goals, love, work, healing, or growth. It means you stop making the future responsible for your entire inner life, because the future cannot carry that weight. If all your peace lives in someday, then today becomes emotionally empty. And if today becomes empty enough times, your whole life begins to feel like something you are waiting to start. There are people who have postponed joy for so long that joy now feels unfamiliar. They do not know how to enjoy a quiet meal without guilt. They do not know how to sit in sunlight without checking what still needs to be done. They do not know how to laugh freely without feeling like they should be solving something. Their mind has been trained to believe that life must be earned later, not received now. But life is not only a reward at the end of suffering. Life is also this small breath, this simple morning, this tired evening, this ordinary chance to be present. The attachment to the perfect moment often comes from the fear of making mistakes. People wait because they do not want to begin badly. They do not want to look foolish. They do not want to be judged. They do not want to choose wrong, so they keep delaying action until they can guarantee a painless outcome. But no path worth walking comes with that guarantee. The person who waits to speak until every word is perfect may never tell the truth. The person who waits to create until every skill is perfect may never create. The person who waits to love until every wound is healed may never open their heart. The person who waits to live until fear disappears may never live. Fear does not always leave before action. Sometimes it leaves because action teaches the heart that it can survive. This is one reason Buddhist practice is so simple and so difficult at the same time. It does not ask for dramatic promises about the future. It asks for presence now. Sit, breathe, notice, return, speak. Kindly, walk consciously, eat with awareness, meet anger without becoming it, meet fear without worshipping it, meet uncertainty without running away. These are not glamorous actions, but they are powerful because they break the spell of later. The mind loves big future transformations because they allow you to avoid small present responsibilities. It is easier to dream about becoming peaceful one day than to pause before reacting today. It is easier to imagine a future life of discipline than to do one honest thing now. It is easier to believe you will be more loving someday than to listen fully to the person in front of you today. The future can become a hiding place from the next real action, and Buddhism brings everything back to the next real action. Not the perfect action, the real one, the honest one, the one available now. Sometimes the next real action is not dramatic. It may be forgiving yourself. It may be washing the dish slowly. It may be answering the message you keep avoiding. It may be resting before your body breaks down. It may be telling someone, "I am here." It may be closing your eyes and feeling the breath instead of escaping into another plan. Small presence destroys the illusion of someday, because every time you return to now, you prove that life does not need to wait for perfect conditions before becoming meaningful. Attachment to the perfect moment can also appear in spiritual life. Some people wait to practice until they feel calm. They wait to meditate until the house is silent. They wait to be compassionate until they are no longer angry. They wait to be mindful until life becomes less busy. But spiritual practice is not something you do after life becomes peaceful. It is how you meet life when it is not peaceful. You do not need a perfect mood to breathe consciously. You do not need a silent world to notice your thoughts. You do not need a flawless heart to practice compassion. You do not need a perfect life to begin awakening. The path begins exactly where your feet are. This is why the perfect moment is often an illusion. It suggests that life must arrange itself beautifully before you can respond beautifully. But Buddhism teaches that freedom is found in your response, not in perfect surroundings. A person can be in a quiet room and still suffer deeply because the mind is restless. Another person can be in a difficult season and still touch peace because awareness is present. The outer moment does not have to be perfect for the inner posture to soften. This is not easy. The mind will resist it. The mind will say, "Not yet. You are not ready. You need more time. You need more certainty. You need one more sign." But if you look closely, you may notice that the mind has been saying this for years. And how many moments has it cost you? How many conversations have been delayed? How many dreams have been postponed? How many simple joys have been refused? How many mornings have been spent waiting for a life that was already asking to be lived? This is not said to create regret. It is said to awaken tenderness, because the moment you see the pattern, you are no longer fully trapped inside it. You can choose differently. You can stop turning someday into a temple where you sacrifice today. You can still have hopes without abandoning the present. You can still build toward the future without making now feel worthless. You can still desire change without treating this moment like an enemy. That is the middle path. Buddhism does not tell you to reject the future. It teaches you not to cling to it. There is a difference. Planning tomorrow is not the problem. Believing you cannot live until tomorrow becomes perfect is the problem. Hope is healthy when it opens the heart. Craving becomes painful when it closes the present. A hopeful person says, "I am walking towards something good and I can still be here today." A craving mind says, I cannot be here until I get there. That small difference changes an entire life. Because if you can be here while moving forward, then the path itself becomes alive. You stop treating every day as a useless delay before the destination. You begin to feel the texture of the journey. You notice the lessons, the people, the small blessings, the strength forming quietly inside you. But if you cannot be here until you get there, even arrival may disappoint you. Because the mind that refused today may also refuse tomorrow when it comes. This is why some people reach the perfect moment and still feel anxious. The wedding happens and they worry about the marriage. The job comes and they worry about keeping it. The money arrives and they fear losing it. The new life begins and they immediately search for what is still missing. The issue was never only the absence of the perfect moment. The issue was the habit of not arriving. Buddhist presence heals that habit by teaching the mind to stop leaning so violently into the future, not by force, not by shame, but through gentle return. You return when you notice yourself saying, "My life will begin later." You return when you feel yourself waiting for permission to breathe. You return when you catch the mind turning the future into a savior. You return by asking, what part of my life is asking for presence right now? That question can change the day. Maybe your body is asking for care. Maybe your home is asking for attention. Maybe your heart is asking for honesty. Maybe someone near you is asking to be loved while they are still here. Maybe your own soul is asking you to stop treating it like an unfinished project. The perfect moment often steals from the imperfect one. It tells you this day is not special enough. This version of you is not good enough. This opportunity is not clean enough. This beginning is not impressive enough. But many meaningful lives begin quietly, awkwardly, imperfectly. A sincere apology may not be perfect, but it can heal something. A first attempt may not be beautiful, but it can open a door. A small act of courage may not change everything, but it can change the direction of your life. A moment of presence may not solve all suffering, but it can interrupt years of absence. Do not underestimate imperfect beginnings. The mind wants a grand entrance. Life often gives a small opening. The mind wants a clean sign. Life often whispers. The mind wants certainty. Life offers the next step, and the next step is enough. There is also a hidden arrogance in waiting for the perfect moment. Not loud arrogance, but a subtle belief that life should meet our conditions before we give ourselves fully to it. We say, "I will be present when reality becomes easier." But reality does not belong to us. It moves by its own nature. It changes, opens, closes, gives, removes, teaches, and transforms. Buddhist humility means bowing to life as it is, not only as we wish it to be. This humility does not make you passive. It makes you honest. You begin to work with the moment you have, instead of resenting it for not being the moment you ordered. You use the energy available now. You love with the heart you have now. You practice with the mind you have now. You begin with the life you have now. And strangely, this is when real transformation becomes possible. Not because the moment became perfect, but because you stopped refusing it. The present moment is not always pleasant. Sometimes it is painful. Sometimes it is boring. Sometimes it is uncertain. Sometimes it reveals emotions you would rather avoid, but it is alive, and because it is alive, it can be worked with. The future is only an image. You cannot breathe in the future. You cannot love someone in the future. You cannot heal a wound in the future. You can only do those things when the future becomes now. So why not begin with the now already here? The word someday can be useful when it inspires movement, but it becomes dangerous when it replaces movement. It becomes dangerous when you say it again and again while never taking the small action available today. It becomes dangerous when it turns your life into a storage room for unlived dreams. Someday I will call. Someday I will forgive. Someday I will start. Someday I will change. Someday I will enjoy this. Someday I will be free. But Buddhism gently asks, what are you waiting for before you return to your own life? Not everything can happen today, but presence can. Not every dream can be completed today, but one sincere step can. Not every wound can heal today, but kindness toward the wound can begin. Not every fear can vanish today, but you can stop letting fear decide everything. This is how attachment to someday begins to dissolve. You do not need to destroy your dreams. You need to stop hiding inside them. You do not need to reject preparation. You need to stop making preparation a condition for living. You do not need to force yourself into reckless action. You need to notice where waiting has become a mask for fear. When the mind says, I need the perfect moment, ask gently, or do I need courage inside this imperfect one? That question brings you back to the path, because courage is not the absence of uncertainty. Courage is movement without full guarantees. Presence is not the absence of desire. Presence is freedom from being ruled by desire. Peace is not the absence of unfinished things. Peace is the ability to breathe while life remains unfinished. And this is where the Buddhist teaching becomes deeply tender. You do not have to wait until your life is beautiful before you treat it as sacred. You do not have to wait until you are healed before you speak to yourself gently. You do not have to wait until everything is certain before you take one honest step. You do not have to wait until the perfect moment before you begin living the life that is already here, because the moment you are waiting for may not arrive in the form your mind demands. It may arrive disguised as this ordinary day, this imperfect breath, this unfinished season, this quiet chance to stop postponing yourself. And maybe the perfect moment was never a future event. Maybe it was always the moment you finally stopped waiting for one. That is when life begins to open again, not because everything changed around you, but because something changed within you. The craving for a flawless someday loses its grip. The heart softens, the breath returns, the eyes become clearer, and the present moment, the one you kept overlooking, becomes enough ground for the next step. Not someday, now. And when a person spends enough years waiting for the perfect moment, something painful begins to happen quietly inside them. The mind no longer postpones only goals or dreams. It begins postponing joy itself. Rest becomes delayed. Peace becomes delayed. Happiness becomes delayed. The heart slowly learns a dangerous lesson. Life is not now. Life is later. And without noticing it, a person can spend decades emotionally absent from their own existence. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. It comes from carrying the belief that you are never allowed to fully arrive yet. A person wakes up tired, not only because the body is overworked, but because the spirit has been endlessly postponed. Every day becomes another transaction, another climb, another attempt to finally earn permission to breathe deeply, rest honestly, and feel joy without guilt. I will relax after this project. I will enjoy life after I become successful. I will rest when things calm down. I will finally feel peaceful when everything is solved. But life keeps moving. Problems change shape. Responsibilities evolve. New fears replace old ones. And because the mind has trained itself to delay happiness, it no longer knows how to receive happiness even when small, peaceful moments appear. This is the quiet violence of postponed joy. It is called quiet because nobody notices it immediately. There are no loud alarms, no dramatic collapse at first. A person may still go to work, answer messages, smile in public, and continue functioning. But inside, something slowly dries out. The nervous system becomes trapped in constant future tension. The heart stops expecting nourishment from ordinary life. The person begins surviving instead of living. Buddhism teaches that suffering is not only caused by pain itself. Suffering also grows when we resist life so completely that we stop allowing ourselves to experience simple moments of aliveness. Many people are deeply uncomfortable with joy because they secretly believe joy must be earned through suffering first. They cannot rest unless they are completely exhausted. They cannot enjoy themselves unless every responsibility is finished. They cannot slow down without guilt. They cannot receive peace because their identity has become attached to striving. This creates a life where happiness is always conditional. Conditional happiness is fragile happiness. I can only feel okay when everything is under control. I can only relax when everyone approves of me. I can only rest after I prove myself. But control disappears. Approval changes. Achievements fade. And the person who built their peace on conditions becomes emotionally unstable every time life shifts. Buddhism points toward a different way of living, not careless living, not irresponsible living, but a way of living where inner peace is no longer postponed until the world becomes perfect, because the world has never been perfect. And still, there have always been sunsets. There have always been moments of laughter. There have always been warm meals, soft music, rain against windows, quiet conversations, gentle breaths, tired smiles, and ordinary moments asking to be noticed. But postponed joy trains people to overlook all of it. A person drinks coffee while worrying, walks through nature while mentally working, sits with family while emotionally absent, lies in bed while preparing for tomorrow. The body is present, but the mind is somewhere else entirely. And over time, the heart begins believing that peace is always somewhere ahead, never here. This belief wounds people more deeply than they realize. Because when joy is constantly delayed, the nervous system starts living in permanent incompleteness. The mind keeps saying, "Not yet, not yet, not yet." The person may not say those words out loud, but the body feels them every day. Not yet allowed to rest, not yet allowed to feel enough, not yet allowed to slow down, not yet allowed to simply exist without proving something. This creates hidden emotional starvation. Some people have not truly relaxed in years, even during moments that were supposed to feel beautiful. Their mind keeps searching for problems. Their body remains tense during vacations. Their thoughts keep moving during peaceful evenings. They no longer know how to receive life gently because they have trained themselves to believe that safety only exists in constant preparation and effort. This is why so many people feel strangely empty even after reaching goals they once desperately wanted. The achievement arrives, but the ability to feel joy never developed. They spent years learning how to chase, but never learned how to arrive. Postponed joy is not only about delaying pleasure, it is about delaying your own permission to feel alive. Some people postpone rest because they think resting means laziness. Some postpone happiness because they think suffering makes them more responsible. Some postpone peace because chaos has become familiar. And some postpone love because they fear vulnerability more than loneliness. Buddhism teaches that attachment can even happen toward suffering itself. People become attached to struggle because struggle gives identity. It gives structure. It gives the illusion of purpose. A person who has spent years fighting may no longer know who they are without pressure. This is why stillness feels frightening to many people. Stillness removes distraction. Stillness exposes emotional exhaustion. Stillness reveals grief that productivity was covering. Stillness reveals loneliness hidden beneath busyness. And because of this, many people unconsciously avoid peace. They keep themselves mentally occupied because slowing down would force them to feel what they have avoided for years. But the tragedy is that life cannot truly be touched without presence. You cannot fully feel joy while mentally escaping the moment. You cannot deeply rest while rehearsing tomorrow. You cannot receive love while emotionally guarding yourself every second. The Buddhist path gently calls people back to direct experience, back to this breath, back to this meal, back to this conversation, back to this tired but living body. The quiet violence of postponed joy often begins early in life. Many people were praised only when they achieved something. They learned that rest must be earned. They learned that value comes from performance. They learned that slowing down leads to criticism or shame. So they built identities around striving. These identities may look successful from the outside, but internally they often feel deeply unsafe. Because if your worth depends on endless productivity, then peace always feels temporary. You can never truly stop. You can never fully soften. You can never simply exist. This is why some people panic during quiet moments. Silence threatens the identity built on constant doing. Buddhism offers another possibility. The possibility that your existence itself already has value before achievement enters the picture. Not because you are special, not because you are superior, but because life itself is sacred. A flower does not earn permission to bloom through productivity. The ocean does not apologize for resting under moonlight. Birds do not justify their songs through efficiency. Only human beings create lives where joy must constantly pass through checkpoints before being allowed inside. This creates tremendous suffering. A person may spend their healthiest years postponing rest for future success, only to discover later that the body has changed. Another may spend years delaying connection while building security, only to realize relationships weakened quietly during the process. Someone else may postpone simple happiness while chasing external goals, only to discover that the habit of emotional postponement followed them into every achievement. The problem was never only external pressure. The problem became internal conditioning. The heart was trained to believe life is always somewhere else. This conditioning affects the body deeply. Chronic stress changes breathing patterns, muscles remain tight, sleep becomes shallow. The nervous system stays alert, even in safe environments. Some people no longer know what true rest feels like because they have lived too long inside internal urgency. And modern life constantly rewards this urgency. People praise exhaustion. They admire busyness. They glorify burnout. A person who rests is often made to feel guilty, while a person who destroys themselves through work is called disciplined. But Buddhism asks a different question. What is the quality of your mind while you are living? Because a successful life with no presence still feels empty. A productive life with no inner stillness still feels painful. An admired life with no ability to receive joy still feels lonely. The Buddhist understanding of happiness is deeply different from modern culture. Happiness is not treated as a reward waiting at the end of achievement. It is treated as something connected to awareness, compassion, simplicity, and presence. This changes how a person relates to ordinary moments. Washing dishes can become peaceful. Walking can become peaceful. Listening can become peaceful. Breathing can become peaceful, not because the action itself is magical, but because attention returns to reality instead of constantly escaping it. Postponed joy disconnects people from these small moments completely. They rush through mornings, rush through meals, rush through conversations, rush through years. And one day they look back shocked by how quickly life disappeared. Not because time moved faster than expected, but because presence was missing from so much of it. This is one reason Buddhism places such deep importance on mindfulness. Mindfulness is not just a meditation technique, it is a way of reclaiming your life from unconscious absence. When you eat mindfully, you actually taste the food. When you listen mindfully, people feel your presence. When you walk mindfully, the world becomes more alive. When you breathe mindfully, the nervous system softens. Mindfulness interrupts the habit of postponing existence. It says, "This moment matters too." That sentence can heal something deep inside a person who has spent years emotionally waiting for life to begin. Many people secretly believe that happiness is irresponsible. They think if they relax too much, everything will fall apart. So they maintain internal pressure constantly. They motivate themselves through fear. Fear of failure, fear of falling behind, fear of disappointing others, fear of becoming unimportant. But fear creates temporary movement, not sustainable peace. Eventually the body protests, the heart becomes numb, the mind becomes tired, the soul becomes disconnected, and suddenly the person realizes they achieved many things while barely experiencing themselves along the way. Buddhism does not reject discipline, it rejects unconscious suffering. You can work hard without abandoning yourself. You can build goals without postponing your humanity. You can care about the future without refusing the present. This balance is deeply important, because postponed joy slowly teaches the mind that peace belongs somewhere else. And once this belief becomes strong enough, even beautiful moments feel emotionally unreachable. A person receives love but cannot fully feel it, receives praise but dismisses it immediately, receives rest but feels guilty during it, receives beauty but barely notices it. The problem is not always the absence of blessings. Sometimes it is the inability to stay present long enough to receive them. This is why awareness matters so much. Awareness allows you to notice small forms of life before they disappear. The warmth of tea in your hands, the sound of someone laughing nearby, the softness of evening light, the feeling of clean air entering your lungs. These moments may seem ordinary, but ordinary moments quietly become entire lives. And postponed joy steals them one by one. A person waiting for a bigger future often misses the small sacredness already surrounding them. Buddhist wisdom reminds people that joy does not only exist in major milestones. Sometimes it exists in stopping long enough to notice that you are alive right now, not later, not after becoming perfect, now. This does not mean forcing positivity. Buddhism is not about pretending suffering does not exist. Pain exists, loss exists, grief exists, exhaustion exists. But postponed joy adds another layer of suffering by refusing to allow any peace until all pain disappears. And pain never disappears completely. Human life includes uncertainty. So if peace depends on the total absence of difficulty, peace becomes impossible. The Buddhist path teaches something more compassionate. It teaches that peace can exist beside imperfection. A grieving person can still feel sunlight. An anxious person can still breathe deeply. A struggling person can still receive kindness. A tired person can still experience moments of beauty. Life is not divided into completely painful seasons and completely peaceful seasons. Most moments contain both. But postponed joy trains the mind to ignore all light until darkness disappears completely. That is why it is violent. Not violent in a loud, obvious way. Violent in the way it slowly starves the spirit. Violent in the way it teaches people they must constantly delay themselves. Violent in the way it disconnects human beings from their own aliveness. Some people become so focused on surviving the future that they stop noticing they survived today. And surviving today matters. Your tired body matters. Your current heart matters. This unfinished chapter matters. There is tremendous healing in allowing yourself small moments of peace before your entire life changes. Not because everything is solved, but because you are still human while things remain unsolved. The Buddhist path invites gentleness toward this humanity. Gentleness toward your nervous system, gentleness toward your limitations, gentleness toward your imperfect progress, gentleness toward your need for rest. Modern culture often treats gentleness as weakness, but deep awareness reveals the opposite. It takes courage to stop punishing yourself through endless emotional postponement. It takes wisdom to rest before collapse. It takes maturity to understand that your worth is not measured only by output. Some people are waiting for permission to finally exhale, but perhaps permission was never missing. Perhaps they only forgot they were allowed to be alive while still unfinished. This changes how you move through ordinary days. You stop rushing every meal. You stop turning every conversation into another task. You stop treating rest like wasted time. You stop measuring every moment only by productivity. You begin asking different questions. Did I feel this day? Did I notice anything beautiful? Did I speak honestly? Did I breathe fully even once? Did I allow myself one small moment of peace? These questions reconnect the heart to life itself, because a meaningful life is not built only from achievements. It is built from attention to people, attention to moments, attention to your own inner world, attention to existence itself. And when attention returns, postponed joy slowly loses its power. The person begins realizing they do not need to wait for a perfect future before touching small forms of peace now. They can sit quietly without guilt. They can rest before exhaustion destroys them. They can receive love without first becoming flawless. They can appreciate simple moments while still building their future. This is not laziness. This is balance. This is remembering that your life is not only a problem to solve, it is also an experience to inhabit. And maybe one of the saddest realizations a person can have is understanding how often they refused themselves joy while waiting for conditions that never fully arrived. But this realization can also become the beginning of awakening. Because once you see the pattern clearly, you no longer need to obey it automatically. You can choose differently. You can pause in the middle of striving. You can let one breath fully enter the body. You can soften your shoulders. You can notice the sky. You can allow one quiet moment to matter. You can stop treating happiness like a reward that only future versions of you deserve. The life you are constantly postponing is not waiting somewhere ahead. It is happening now, inside this breath. Inside this ordinary evening, inside this unfinished version of yourself. And perhaps true peace begins the moment you stop telling your heart that life is always later. And when the heart spends enough years postponing joy, another habit quietly begins to grow beside it. The mind starts preparing for pain so constantly that it forgets how to recognize beauty while it is still here. A person becomes so focused on protecting themselves from future suffering that they stop fully experiencing the blessings already surrounding them. And slowly, fear steals the colors from ordinary life. There is a sadness that comes from always expecting the worst, even during beautiful moments. A person sits beside someone they love, but instead of feeling gratitude, they feel fear of losing them someday. Another finally reaches a peaceful season, but instead of resting inside it, they prepare for when everything might fall apart again. Someone else receives kindness but cannot trust it because their mind is already rehearsing betrayal. The body is present, but the heart is bracing. This is what happens when survival mode becomes stronger than presence. Buddhism teaches that suffering often grows not only from pain itself, but from the mind's endless attempt to guard against future pain before it arrives. The mind believes that if it stays alert enough, worried enough, skeptical enough, and emotionally guarded enough, it can somehow avoid being hurt again. But this protection comes with a hidden cost. You may avoid some disappointment, but you also stop fully touching life. A guarded heart cannot fully receive beauty because it is too busy scanning for danger. This happens quietly over time. A person gets hurt once, so they become more careful. Then life hurts them again, so they become even more guarded. Eventually they stop entering moments openly at all. Every experience becomes filtered through caution. They prepare for rejection before speaking, prepare for abandonment before loving, prepare for failure before trying, prepare for loss while still holding what they love. And because of this, even joyful moments begin carrying fear inside them. The mind says, "Do not enjoy this too much. It may disappear. Do not trust this fully. You may get hurt. Do not become too hopeful. Life may disappoint you again." This is one of the quiet tragedies of emotional survival. The person does not realize they are slowly starving themselves of aliveness while trying to avoid pain. Buddhism does not deny suffering. It openly acknowledges impermanence. Everything changes. People leave, bodies age, seasons end, joy comes and goes. But Buddhism teaches something very different from emotional paranoia. It teaches awareness without clinging, presence without control, love without trying to imprison life into permanence. The fearful mind hears impermanence and becomes defensive. The awakened mind hears impermanence and becomes more present. That difference changes everything. When you deeply understand that life is temporary, ordinary moments become sacred instead of frightening. A conversation becomes precious. A hug becomes precious. A quiet evening becomes precious. Even simple things begin shining differently because you realize they will not last forever. But when fear controls the mind, impermanence becomes something to fight instead of something to honor. A person becomes emotionally tense during good moments because they are already grieving their ending before they even fully begin. This is exhausting. Some people have forgotten how to relax into happiness because they associate openness with vulnerability. Their nervous system learned that loving deeply leads to pain, trusting deeply leads to disappointment, hoping deeply leads to heartbreak, so they stay partially guarded all the time. But partial openness creates partial living. A person may protect themselves from certain forms of pain, but they also reduce their capacity to feel wonder, intimacy, connection, and gratitude. The mind believes it is creating safety, but often it is creating emotional distance. This can happen after betrayal, after grief, after rejection, after instability, after years of disappointment. The mind starts preparing for future suffering before life even unfolds. It becomes hyper-alert to possible danger. It studies facial expressions. It predicts mood changes. It anticipates loss. It rehearses painful scenarios repeatedly. And because the brain adapts to whatever it practices most, the person slowly becomes better at noticing threats than noticing beauty. This changes the entire texture of life. The mind no longer naturally looks for what is alive, warm, meaningful, or good. It scans for cracks, problems, risks, signs of future pain. A peaceful moment appears, and instead of entering it fully, the mind asks, "How long will this last?" A loving relationship appears, and the mind asks, "When will they leave?" A successful season appears, and the mind asks, "What if I lose everything?" The heart never truly arrives because fear keeps pulling attention toward imagined suffering. Buddhist awareness gently interrupts this pattern, not by forcing positivity and not by pretending danger does not exist. It interrupts the pattern by teaching you to meet reality directly instead of living inside projections. Reality may contain uncertainty, but projections multiply suffering far beyond what is actually happening. Right now, perhaps the person you love is still here. Right now, perhaps the sun is still touching your window. Right now, perhaps your breath is still moving gently through your body. Right now, perhaps this ordinary moment still contains life waiting to be noticed. But fear blinds people to these realities because fear is always emotionally leaning ahead. This is why presence matters so deeply. Presence allows you to receive moments before the mind poisons them with imagined endings. There are people who have spent entire vacations worrying about returning home, entire relationships worrying about abandonment, entire peaceful seasons waiting for disaster, entire conversations mentally preparing responses instead of listening. Their life becomes a hallway of emotional anticipation. The present moment rarely feels enough because the mind keeps escaping toward future pain. This creates a very painful contradiction. The person wants peace, but their habits keep training the nervous system to expect danger. Over time, safety itself begins to feel unfamiliar. Some people cannot trust peaceful moments because chaos has become emotionally normal. Stillness feels suspicious. Happiness feels temporary. Rest feels unsafe. Their body has spent so many years bracing for impact that softness feels uncomfortable. This is one reason healing requires more than changing circumstances. It requires teaching the nervous system that presence is survivable. Buddhism understands this deeply. That is why so much Buddhist practice returns to the body, the breath, walking, eating, sitting, listening. These simple practices gently retrain attention. They teach the mind to stop abandoning reality every few seconds, because beauty lives in reality, not in fearful projections. A person can stand under a beautiful sky while mentally drowning in imagined problems. Another person can sit in a small, quiet room and suddenly feel profound gratitude because attention fully returns to what is here. The difference is not always circumstance. The difference is awareness. Many people think they are protecting themselves by expecting disappointment. They believe if they stay emotionally cautious enough, future pain will hurt less. But pain still hurts, loss still hurts, grief still hurts. The heart cannot completely avoid suffering without also avoiding life itself. And strangely, trying to emotionally avoid all suffering often creates another kind of suffering entirely. Loneliness, disconnection, numbness, emotional exhaustion, the inability to receive joy fully. Buddhism teaches the middle path between attachment and avoidance. You do not cling desperately to beautiful things as if they can never change, but you also do not refuse to love them because they are temporary. You participate fully while understanding impermanence. This is one of the bravest ways a human being can live. To love while knowing nothing lasts forever. To enjoy beauty while knowing seasons change. To open your heart while understanding vulnerability exists. Fear tells people to close themselves before life can hurt them again. But a closed heart suffers too. It suffers from distance. It suffers from numbness. It suffers from never fully arriving inside moments that deserved to be felt. Some people are alive physically but emotionally standing behind glass. They watch life instead of entering it. They study relationships instead of trusting them. They analyze moments instead of inhabiting them. They prepare emotionally for pain so constantly that beauty barely reaches them anymore. And perhaps one of the saddest forms of suffering is when a person forgets how to notice beauty altogether. Not because beauty disappeared, but because fear consumed all attention. Buddhist mindfulness gently restores this attention. Mindfulness teaches people how to see again. The sound of birds early in the morning, the warmth of tea, the feeling of sunlight on tired skin, the softness in someone's eyes when they truly care, the quiet miracle of another breath. These things seem small until one day they are gone. Then people suddenly realize they were standing inside blessings they barely noticed. Fear steals this noticing. Fear makes people emotionally absent from their own lives. There are parents so worried about the future that they miss their child's current age completely. There are couples so afraid of losing each other that they stop enjoying each other now. There are people so focused on avoiding pain that they stop receiving love. This is not because they are weak. It is because the mind believes protection equals survival. But protection without presence becomes isolation. Buddhism teaches that awareness allows suffering to move through life without completely dominating perception. Pain may exist, but beauty still exists beside it. Grief may exist, but kindness still exists beside it. Uncertainty may exist, but life still unfolds in small, meaningful moments. A fearful mind sees only what might go wrong. An aware mind still sees what is alive right now. This does not mean becoming naive. Buddhism is not teaching blind optimism. It is teaching balanced seeing. Seeing impermanence without becoming imprisoned by it. Seeing risk without losing gratitude. Seeing uncertainty without abandoning wonder. This balance is difficult because fear feels useful. Fear makes people feel prepared, alert, in control. But constant emotional guarding slowly hardens the heart. A hardened heart struggles to feel awe, struggles to trust, struggles to rest, struggles to soften into life. And without softness, human existence begins to feel emotionally dry. There is tremendous courage in allowing yourself to fully experience a good moment without immediately preparing for its loss. To laugh without predicting sadness, to love without mentally rehearsing endings, to rest without guilt, to enjoy beauty without suspicion. This courage is not foolishness, it is presence. Presence says, "This moment is here now, and I will meet it fully." Fear says, "This moment may disappear, so do not trust it too deeply." One opens life, the other shrinks it. Many people inherited fear from painful experiences they never fully processed. Maybe trust was broken repeatedly. Maybe stability disappeared suddenly. Maybe love came with unpredictability. The mind adapted by becoming hypervigilant. Hypervigilance can help someone survive difficult environments, but when it becomes permanent, it prevents deep peace. The body remains tense even when danger is gone. The heart keeps preparing for impact even during gentle moments. This is why healing often feels unfamiliar at first. A calm nervous system may feel strange. A peaceful relationship may feel suspicious. A stable life may feel boring to someone accustomed to chaos. The mind keeps searching for hidden danger because danger became emotionally familiar. Buddhist awareness slowly loosens this conditioning, not through force, but through repeated return to direct experience. You notice the fear, you notice the tightening, you notice the mental rehearsal, and instead of disappearing into it completely, you breathe. You return to what is actually happening. You allow the body to soften slightly. You allow this moment to exist without immediately turning it into tragedy. This is sacred work, not dramatic work, quiet work, the kind that happens while washing dishes, while sitting quietly, while listening fully, while catching yourself preparing for pain in the middle of a beautiful moment and gently choosing presence instead. Over time, this changes perception. Beauty becomes visible again, not because suffering vanished, but because fear no longer controls all attention. You start noticing things you once rushed past. The kindness of strangers, the peacefulness of silence, the resilience inside your own body, the fact that you survived things you once thought would destroy you, the fact that life still offers moments of tenderness even after heartbreak. This is deeply important because fearful living narrows the soul. It reduces existence to threat management. The person stops asking, "What beauty exists here?" and only asks, "What danger exists here?" Buddhism widens perception again. It reminds you that reality contains more than fear, more than future suffering, more than uncertainty. Reality also contains life itself, and life itself deserves attention. One of the most painful truths about preparing constantly for pain is that someday real loss will still come anyway. No amount of emotional rehearsal completely removes grief when someone dies. No amount of worry fully protects the heart from heartbreak. No amount of anticipation erases the ache of change. So if suffering eventually arrives regardless, why spend your entire life grieving things before they happen? Why lose today's beauty to tomorrow's imaginary sorrow? This question matters deeply because many people are mourning futures that do not even exist yet, and while they mourn, real life quietly waits beside them unnoticed. The Buddhist path calls people back from this invisible tragedy, back to this ordinary sacred moment, back to this breath, back to this life before fear steals all of it. You do not need to stop caring deeply in order to suffer less. You do not need to become emotionally numb. You do not need to harden your heart against love. You simply need to stop abandoning the present in service of imagined future pain. That shift changes the quality of existence itself. You begin enjoying conversations while they happen instead of fearing when they will end. You begin appreciating your body while it is still carrying you. You begin noticing peaceful moments instead of mentally escaping them. You begin allowing joy to exist without immediately preparing for disaster. And perhaps this is one of the deepest forms of wisdom Buddhism offers. Not the wisdom of avoiding all suffering, but the wisdom of remaining awake enough to still see beauty while life remains uncertain. Because uncertainty has always existed, and still flowers bloom. Still, laughter appears unexpectedly. Still, kindness survives. Still, people love each other. Still, sunsets arrive quietly at the end of difficult days. Still, life continues offering moments worth noticing. The fearful mind misses many of these moments because it is too busy preparing armor. But armor also blocks warmth. And maybe true healing begins when you realize that protecting yourself from every possible wound is not the same thing as living. Living requires openness, presence, attention, the willingness to feel beauty before it disappears, the courage to receive joy while it is still here, the humility to understand that life has never promised permanence, yet still offers moments of extraordinary grace anyway. And perhaps peace begins the moment you stop preparing for pain long enough to finally notice how much beauty has been waiting patiently beside you all along. And once a person begins noticing how fear can blind them to beauty, another painful pattern slowly becomes impossible to ignore. The mind does not only prepare for pain occasionally. For many people, it lives permanently ahead of the body. It wakes up already worried about tomorrow. It eats while thinking about next week. It lies down at night rehearsing conversations, disasters, responsibilities, and problems that do not even exist yet. And over time, the body starts carrying the exhaustion of futures it has never actually lived. There is a kind of tiredness that comes from constantly living 3 steps ahead of your own life. The body may be sitting quietly in a safe room, but the mind is already arguing with someone, fixing a future crisis, preparing for failure, replaying mistakes, or trying to predict outcomes that have not happened. This creates a strange experience where a person looks physically still but feels internally chased. The nervous system cannot fully rest because the mind never truly arrives. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering comes from mental proliferation. One thought appears, and the mind builds an entire world around it. A small uncertainty becomes a future catastrophe. A simple problem becomes 10 imagined disasters. A delayed message becomes rejection. A difficult conversation becomes a ruined future. The mind races ahead, trying to secure safety before life even unfolds. And while the future remains imaginary, the stress becomes real inside the body. The heart beats faster, the shoulders tighten, the jaw hardens, the stomach twists. Sleep becomes shallow, breathing becomes shorter. The body responds as if danger is already here. This is why anxiety can feel so physically exhausting even when nothing visible is happening. The body is burning energy, reacting to imagined futures over and over again. Many people believe anxiety only exists in the mind, but anxiety eventually moves into the muscles, the breath, the nervous system, and even the way a person walks through ordinary moments. A person living 3 steps ahead rarely feels fully settled anywhere because their attention keeps escaping the present. They walk while thinking about the destination, eat while thinking about work, rest while thinking about tomorrow, listen while preparing responses, pray while worrying. Even peaceful moments become mentally crowded. This constant mental movement slowly drains the body because human beings were not designed to carry endless futures all at once. The mind says, "What if this happens next week?" Then immediately, "What if that creates another problem?" Then another thought appears. Then another. The person mentally lives through multiple imaginary versions of life before the real day even begins. And perhaps the saddest part is that many people become so used to this state that they no longer recognize it as suffering. It simply feels normal. Constant inner pressure becomes normal. Racing thoughts become normal. Tension becomes normal. Exhaustion becomes normal. But Buddhism gently reveals something important. Just because a mental state is familiar does not mean it is healthy. The anxious mind believes staying ahead equals staying safe. If I think about every possible outcome, maybe nothing will surprise me. If I mentally prepare enough, maybe I can avoid pain. If I stay alert constantly, maybe I can finally relax later. But later rarely comes, because anxiety feeds on uncertainty, and uncertainty is endless. One problem gets solved, another appears. One fear fades, another takes its place. The mind living 3 steps ahead never reaches arrival because it survives through anticipation itself. This creates deep exhaustion because the body keeps receiving signals that danger is near, even during ordinary moments. A person may wake up already tired before the day truly starts. Not because the body worked all night, but because the mind never stopped rehearsing. Thoughts kept moving, worries kept expanding, imaginary conversations kept repeating. The nervous system remained alert while the body tried to rest. This is one reason anxiety feels so heavy. The body is carrying invisible weight. Buddhism teaches that awareness interrupts this invisible suffering by returning attention to direct experience, instead of imagined futures. Right now, perhaps you are only sitting in a chair. Right now, perhaps the breath is still moving gently. Right now, perhaps there is no actual emergency in the room. But the anxious mind struggles to trust simple reality. It constantly scans ahead, searching for what could go wrong next. This habit often begins from pain. Maybe someone grew up in unstable environments where staying alert was necessary. Maybe life became unpredictable. Maybe trust was broken repeatedly. The mind adapted by learning to anticipate problems before they happened. This adaptation may have once protected the person, but eventually the protection becomes its own prison. A mind trained to survive danger often struggles to recognize safety even when safety exists. This is why some people cannot fully relax even in peaceful environments. Their body learned to expect interruption. Their nervous system learned that calmness may disappear suddenly. So instead of resting inside peace, they prepare for its collapse. Buddhism approaches this suffering with compassion rather than shame. The anxious mind is not weak. It is trying to protect the person. The problem is that it protects through constant future occupation, and future occupation steals present life. A person living 3 steps ahead misses ordinary moments constantly. They rush through meals, rush through conversations, rush through sunsets, rush through weekends, rush through entire years while mentally preparing for the next thing. And one day they suddenly realize they barely inhabited large parts of their own existence. The Buddhist path brings attention back to now, because now is the only place where the body can truly rest. The body cannot rest inside tomorrow. The body cannot breathe inside next year. The body can only exist here. This is why mindfulness practices often seem incredibly simple. Breathing, walking, sitting quietly, feeling the body, watching thoughts pass without following all of them. To an anxious mind, this simplicity may feel almost insulting at first. How can breathing solve my problems? But mindfulness is not pretending problems do not exist. It is teaching the mind to stop multiplying suffering beyond what is actually happening. There is a major difference between responsibly thinking about the future and emotionally living inside it all day long. Wise preparation has boundaries. Anxious anticipation does not. Wise preparation says, here is the next step. Anxiety says, but what about 10 disasters from now? Wise preparation eventually returns to the present. Anxiety never fully leaves the future. This endless future focus overwhelms the nervous system because the human mind was never meant to hold infinite possibilities at once. Many anxious people are mentally solving problems that may never exist, preparing for arguments that never happen, expecting rejection that never arrives, rehearsing disasters that never unfold. And because the body responds emotionally to believed thoughts, the suffering becomes real even when the danger is imaginary. This creates emotional burnout. The body becomes exhausted from surviving scenarios the person never actually lived through. Buddhism teaches that thoughts are events inside the mind, not always objective truth. This realization is deeply important because anxious people often fuse completely with their thoughts. A fear appears, and it immediately feels real. What if everything falls apart? What if I fail? What if they leave? What if something terrible happens? The body reacts instantly, but awareness creates space. Instead of becoming every fearful thought, the person begins noticing thoughts as passing mental activity. Fear may still appear, but it no longer completely controls perception. This changes the relationship with anxiety itself. The goal is not to force the mind into perfect silence. Human minds naturally think. The goal is to stop giving every fearful thought absolute authority over the nervous system. This is why Buddhist meditation often involves observing thoughts without chasing them. A thought comes, the person notices it, the person breathes, the thought passes, another thought comes. Again, awareness notices it. This sounds simple, but it retrains the entire inner world slowly, because anxiety survives through automatic identification with thought. The moment awareness enters, automatic suffering weakens slightly. Many people living 3 steps ahead believe their worrying is helping them stay responsible, and sometimes anxiety disguises itself as intelligence. The person thinks, if I stop worrying, I will become careless. But presence is not carelessness. Presence actually improves clarity because the mind stops drowning in endless projections. An anxious mind often struggles to see reality accurately because fear distorts perception. Small issues feel enormous. Uncertainty feels catastrophic. Temporary discomfort feels permanent. The future becomes emotionally exaggerated. This is why anxious people often feel mentally overwhelmed by situations that may appear manageable from the outside. The nervous system is reacting not only to reality, but to layers of imagined consequences surrounding reality. Buddhism gently removes these extra layers, not by denying pain, but by returning attention to what is directly here, now, this moment, this breath, this actual step, not 10 imagined futures stacked on top of each other. There is tremendous peace in learning that you do not need to mentally solve your entire life in one sitting. The anxious mind tries to do exactly that. It keeps reaching ahead. What about next month? What about next year? What if this fails? What if I regret this? What if things become worse? The mind keeps trying to control uncertainty through endless mental movement. But uncertainty cannot be eliminated through thought alone. Life remains fluid no matter how much the mind rehearses. This realization can feel frightening at first, but eventually it becomes liberating. Because if total certainty is impossible, then perhaps you can stop demanding it before allowing yourself peace. That changes how the body experiences life. The shoulders soften slightly, breathing deepens, moments become more visible. The nervous system slowly learns that not every unknown future requires panic. Many anxious people have forgotten how to inhabit one moment at a time. Their attention automatically jumps ahead. Even during simple tasks, the mind races toward future responsibilities. This creates chronic internal acceleration. The person may look calm externally while internally running constantly. Buddhism slows this acceleration by reconnecting awareness to the body itself. The feeling of feet touching the ground, the sensation of air entering the lungs, the sound of water, the movement of walking, the warmth of food. These small anchors pull attention away from imaginary futures and back toward reality. Reality is usually much smaller than anxiety predicts. Right now, maybe you only need to answer one message. Right now, maybe you only need to rest for 10 minutes. Right now, maybe you only need to finish one task instead of mentally carrying 20. But anxiety makes life feel enormous because it forces the mind to hold too many futures simultaneously. This is why anxious people often feel physically exhausted even after doing relatively little externally. The internal labor never stops. Buddhism recognizes this suffering deeply. It understands how the mind creates additional pain through resistance, anticipation, and mental attachment to outcomes. The anxious mind constantly negotiates with reality before reality even arrives. What if this happens? What if that changes? What if I cannot handle it? But the future has not asked these questions yet. The mind asks them preemptively, then suffers inside the imagined answers. This habit disconnects people from direct experience. A person may be surrounded by beauty while internally drowning in prediction. A peaceful evening becomes another planning session. A quiet morning becomes another mental emergency. A conversation becomes another opportunity to rehearse future problems. Life loses freshness because the mind is rarely truly here. One of the deepest Buddhist lessons is that peace does not come from controlling every future possibility. Peace comes from learning how to stay present with uncertainty itself. This is difficult because modern culture encourages constant future fixation. People are rewarded for always thinking ahead, always optimizing, always preparing, always hustling, but very few people are taught how to actually arrive inside their own lives. The result is widespread nervous system exhaustion. People become disconnected from their bodies, emotions, and present experiences because their attention permanently lives somewhere ahead. And this affects relationships deeply too. An anxious person may struggle to fully listen because they are preparing responses, struggle to enjoy intimacy because they are fearing loss, struggle to relax around loved ones because their mind is already handling tomorrow's worries. The body may sit beside another human being while the mind lives in another timeline entirely. This creates loneliness even inside connection. Buddhist awareness gently restores contact. Contact with the breath, contact with reality, contact with the person in front of you, contact with the life already happening. This restoration takes practice because anxiety habits become deeply automatic over time. The mind may wander ahead hundreds of times. That is okay. The practice is returning again and again, not perfectly, patiently. You notice the future rehearsal. You notice the tension. You notice the catastrophic thinking. Then you gently come back to the room, back to the body, back to now. This repeated return slowly teaches the nervous system a new possibility, that uncertainty can exist without total panic, that thoughts are not always emergencies, that not every future requires immediate emotional occupation, that this breath may actually be enough for this moment. Many people living 3 steps ahead secretly believe that if they stop worrying, everything will collapse. But worrying is not the same thing as wisdom. Panic is not preparation. Fear is not responsibility. In fact, chronic anxiety often weakens clarity because the exhausted mind struggles to think accurately. Rested awareness sees more clearly than frantic overthinking. This is why Buddhist practice values stillness so deeply. Stillness allows perception to settle, like muddy water becoming clear when movement stops. An anxious mind constantly stirs the water. Every future possibility becomes another disturbance. Stillness allows the mind to finally see what is actually here, and what is here is often much simpler than fear predicted. Perhaps this moment only asks for honesty, or rest, or patience, or one small step, not complete mastery over the future. There is freedom in realizing you do not need to mentally live tomorrow before tomorrow arrives. You are allowed to meet life gradually. You are allowed to discover things as they unfold. You are allowed to not know everything yet. This softens the body tremendously. The anxious mind wants guarantees before movement. Presence allows movement without full guarantees. That is courage, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to abandon yourself inside fear. Some people spend so much time rehearsing future suffering that they forget they are still alive today, still breathing, still capable of noticing beauty, still capable of feeling warmth, kindness, sunlight, music, love, and quiet moments of peace. Anxiety narrows perception until survival becomes the only thing visible. Buddhist awareness widens perception again, not by removing uncertainty, but by returning attention to life itself, the tea in your hands, the evening sky, the sound of rain, the breath entering your lungs right now. These things may seem ordinary, but ordinary moments are where life actually happens, not in imagined futures, not in catastrophic mental rehearsals. Here, and perhaps this is the deepest exhaustion of living 3 steps ahead. The body keeps carrying a future the soul has not even reached yet. But the future cannot be fully lived in advance, only feared in advance. Life itself can only be lived when it finally becomes now. That is why Buddhism keeps returning to presence, because presence interrupts the endless race toward imagined disaster. Presence says, this moment is enough to meet right now. Not forever, not perfectly, just now. And maybe peace begins the moment you stop forcing your body to survive futures your life has not even entered yet. And after years of living 3 steps ahead, constantly rehearsing futures that have not arrived, many people become trapped in another exhausting habit they barely notice anymore. They begin bargaining with life itself. Every moment becomes a negotiation. Every task becomes resistance. Every breath becomes tied to conditions. The mind quietly says, I will be okay, when? And that sentence never seems to end. There is a deep exhaustion that comes from constantly arguing with reality in your own head. A person wakes up already negotiating with the day. I will feel peaceful once I finish everything. I will relax once people understand me. I will stop worrying once the future becomes clear. I will finally rest once life becomes easier. But life keeps moving while the negotiation never ends. This is one of the hidden forms of suffering Buddhism points toward so clearly. The human mind constantly bargains with the present moment instead of fully entering it. It resists what is here while chasing an imagined emotional resolution somewhere else. And because of this, people rarely feel fully where they are. Even during ordinary tasks, the mind is elsewhere. Washing dishes while mentally fighting tomorrow, walking while replaying yesterday, working while resenting the work, resting while feeling guilty for resting, talking while preparing the next response. The body performs life, but the mind refuses to settle into it. This creates enormous inner tension. Buddhism teaches that presence begins when inner negotiation finally softens, not because every problem disappears, but because the mind stops demanding that reality become different before allowing peace. This changes the entire relationship with existence. Many people do not realize how much energy they spend resisting simple moments. They resist boredom, resist uncertainty, resist discomfort, resist unfinishedness, resist silence, resist waiting, resist difficult emotions, resist ordinary tasks, resist the pace of life itself, and resistance drains the spirit. A person may spend more energy fighting reality mentally than actually living reality directly. This is why small tasks can feel emotionally heavy. The task itself is often not the deepest problem. The problem is the mental argument surrounding the task. I do not want to do this. This should not be happening. I should be further ahead by now. My life should feel different. Things should be easier. The mind creates endless friction against what already exists. Buddhism gently teaches another possibility. What happens if you stop arguing with this moment for one breath? Not forever, just for one breath. What happens if you simply wash the dish, simply answer the message, simply sit with the sadness, simply walk through the uncertainty without demanding immediate escape? This is not passive surrender. It is presence. Presence is the end of inner negotiation, because presence stops trying to emotionally bargain with reality every second. The anxious mind constantly says, I will allow myself peace later. Presence says, can I meet this moment now? The bargaining mind says, once this changes, I will finally breathe. Presence says, this breath is already here. The bargaining mind keeps postponing life. Presence returns life to now. Many people have lived so long inside mental resistance that they no longer notice how constantly they are fighting their own experience. Even while doing simple things, there is pressure. Pressure to hurry, pressure to become more, pressure to solve everything immediately, pressure to escape discomfort, pressure to fix the future. This pressure creates chronic exhaustion because the nervous system never fully receives permission to settle. The body becomes trapped in subtle survival mode. Even rest becomes tense. Even weekends become planning sessions. Even peaceful evenings become opportunities for overthinking. The mind keeps negotiating with life instead of inhabiting it. Buddhism points toward radical simplicity. Not simplistic thinking, but direct contact with reality before thought complicates it. This cup, this breath, this step, this moment, this day. That simplicity feels strange to many people because modern life trains human beings to constantly chase mental stimulation. The mind becomes addicted to complexity, prediction, comparison, and endless internal commentary. But presence cuts through the noise gently. It asks, what is actually happening right now? Not what may happen, not what happened years ago, right now. And often, reality is much smaller than the mind's endless narrative. Perhaps right now there is only breathing, only sitting, only listening, only feeling tired, only being human for one ordinary moment. This realization can feel surprisingly emotional because many people have spent years carrying psychological weight that was never fully necessary. The mind convinced them they must solve their entire life before allowing themselves to rest. But no human being can carry existence that way forever. Eventually the body protests, the spirit becomes numb, joy disappears, the nervous system becomes overwhelmed, and the person quietly loses touch with simple aliveness. Inner negotiation often begins from fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, fear of not being enough. So the mind bargains constantly, trying to create emotional certainty before relaxing. If this works out, then I will feel safe. If they approve of me, then I will feel worthy. If the future becomes clear, then I will stop worrying. But external life keeps changing, so peace built on conditions always remains fragile. Buddhism teaches that lasting peace cannot depend entirely on controlling circumstances. It must include the ability to remain present even when life remains unfinished. This is deeply important because life is almost always unfinished. There is usually another responsibility, another uncertainty, another challenge, another conversation, another problem waiting somewhere ahead. If peace depends on eliminating every unfinished thing, peace never truly arrives. The mind keeps moving the conditions. Just one more thing. Just one more achievement. Just one more solution. And the heart stays trapped in emotional postponement. Presence interrupts this cycle by removing the negotiation itself, not because everything becomes perfect, but because awareness stops demanding perfection before allowing this moment to exist peacefully. This changes how ordinary life feels. A person washing dishes may suddenly realize they do not need to mentally resist the task the entire time. A person walking may realize they do not need to spend the whole walk mentally rehearsing tomorrow. A person resting may realize they do not need to earn every moment of stillness through exhaustion first. These seem like small shifts, but they completely change the nervous system. Because resistance creates tension, presence softens tension. There is tremendous energy hidden inside acceptance, not passive acceptance that gives up on growth, but honest acceptance of reality as it currently is. This moment exists. This emotion exists. This uncertainty exists. This unfinished life exists. And instead of fighting these truths constantly, the person learns to meet them directly. Buddhism does not ask people to stop acting. It asks them to stop psychologically warring with existence while acting. You can still improve your life without hating your current reality every moment. You can still work toward goals without emotionally abandoning today. You can still solve problems without making your entire nervous system collapse around them. This balance matters deeply because many people confuse tension with responsibility. They believe if they stop worrying constantly, they will stop caring. But presence is not indifference. Presence often creates clearer action because the mind is no longer drowning inside emotional resistance. A calm mind responds better than a panicked one. An aware person sees more clearly than a frantic person. This is why Buddhist teachings often return to breathing. Not because breathing magically removes all difficulty, but because breathing reconnects awareness to direct experience. One breath, then another. Not solving your whole future, not bargaining with tomorrow, just returning to this living moment. The bargaining mind constantly rejects the present in subtle ways. This should not be happening. I should be different by now. They should understand me. My life should feel easier. But reality rarely obeys internal demands completely, and fighting reality mentally creates extra suffering on top of ordinary pain. Buddhism calls this unnecessary suffering. The first pain may be unavoidable, but the mental resistance surrounding the pain often multiplies it dramatically. A difficult emotion appears. Then the mind says, "I should not feel this." Now suffering doubles. An uncertain situation appears. Then the mind says, "This must be solved immediately." Now panic increases. An unfinished season appears. Then the mind says, "My life cannot begin until this changes." Now existence itself feels postponed. Presence softens this multiplication. Presence says, "This is difficult, but I can still remain here. This is unfinished, but I do not need to emotionally disappear. This day is imperfect, but it is still my life." That shift changes suffering profoundly. Many people believe peace will arrive through controlling life more effectively. Buddhism reveals that peace often begins when control relaxes enough for reality to finally be felt directly. This does not mean abandoning wisdom. It means abandoning constant internal warfare. There is a huge difference. Some people argue with reality from the moment they wake up until the moment they fall asleep. Traffic should move faster. People should behave differently. The body should not feel tired. Work should feel easier. Life should already be solved. And because reality rarely matches these endless demands, frustration becomes constant. The nervous system never truly rests. But presence interrupts this pattern. Instead of demanding that reality immediately become different, awareness begins with honesty. This is the traffic. This is the tiredness. This is the uncertainty. This is the moment. And strangely, this honesty creates more peace than endless resistance ever could, because resistance keeps the mind trapped in what should be. Presence reconnects the mind to what is. This is why presence feels so relieving to the exhausted spirit. The exhausted spirit is tired of negotiating constantly, tired of proving, tired of resisting, tired of rehearsing, tired of mentally carrying entire futures. Presence finally says, "You can put some of this down now. Not forever, just now. That is enough." The Buddhist path is filled with ordinary moments because awakening happens inside ordinary moments, not outside life, inside life. Inside dishes, inside breathing, inside conversations, inside waiting rooms, inside uncertainty, inside this unfinished day. Many people search for peace through dramatic future transformation while ignoring the simple doorway available constantly. Attention, this breath, this task, this step, this listening. The mind keeps searching far away while peace waits quietly in direct contact with what already exists. Inner negotiation also damages relationships deeply. A person cannot fully listen while internally bargaining with every conversation, cannot fully love while mentally negotiating outcomes constantly, cannot fully connect while emotionally preparing for future disappointment. The mind living in negotiation mode keeps asking, "What will happen next?" Presence asks, "Can I fully meet this person now?" That changes connection entirely. People feel when they are truly being met. They feel when attention is fully here. And perhaps one of the greatest gifts presence offers is full attention. Not partial attention, not distracted attention, not anxious attention. Real presence. In a world filled with psychological absence, true presence feels almost sacred. The bargaining mind struggles to understand this because it always wants something else first. Something better, something safer, something clearer. But presence does not wait for life to become another life. Presence enters this one. This is why Buddhist teachings often emphasize simplicity so strongly. Drink tea while drinking tea. Walk while walking. Listen while listening. These teachings are not childish. They are medicine for a fragmented mind. A fragmented mind is always somewhere else. Presence reunites the person with their own existence. This reunion can feel emotional because many people realize how long they have been absent from themselves. Years spent mentally negotiating instead of inhabiting, years spent resisting instead of noticing, years spent waiting instead of arriving, and yet the breath remained available the entire time. Life remained available the entire time, not perfect life, real life. The life happening quietly underneath all the mental noise. There is freedom in realizing you do not need to emotionally solve existence before participating in it. You do not need to negotiate every moment into perfection. You do not need to wait for complete certainty before breathing fully. You do not need to force reality into your preferred shape before allowing yourself peace. You can simply meet this day, this task, this emotion, this unfinished chapter. Presence becomes possible the moment the inner argument softens. Not because life finally obeyed you, but because you stopped demanding that life become different before you agreed to inhabit it. This is the end of inner negotiation, not total passivity, not giving up, but no longer making your peace completely dependent on conditions outside this breath. And perhaps this is one of the deepest forms of freedom a human being can experience. The freedom to stop bargaining with life long enough to finally live it. One breath at a time, one honest moment at a time, one ordinary sacred day at a time. And when the mind finally grows tired of negotiating with life every second, another fear often rises quietly underneath everything else. It is the fear of stepping forward before feeling completely ready. The fear that says, not yet. You still need more certainty, more confidence, more healing, more preparation before you can truly begin. And so life stays paused while the heart keeps waiting for permission. There is a silent grief in always feeling one step away from readiness. A person wants to start, but the mind says they need more time. Wants to speak, but the mind says they need more confidence. Wants to love, but the mind says they need more healing first. Wants to change their life, but the mind says they are still too uncertain, too imperfect, too unprepared. And because of this, many people spend years standing at the edge of their own lives without fully entering them. The fear of being unready is one of the deepest invisible prisons the human mind creates. It sounds responsible, it sounds wise, it even sounds mature sometimes, but beneath it is often something much more painful. The fear of failing publicly, the fear of making mistakes, the fear of not being enough once reality begins, the fear that if you step forward before becoming perfect, life will expose your weaknesses. So the mind delays, plans more, studies more, prepares more, waits more, and while waiting, life quietly continues moving. Buddhism teaches something deeply freeing about this fear. It teaches that complete readiness is mostly an illusion. Human beings grow through direct experience, not through endless mental preparation alone. A bird learns to fly by leaving the branch, not by endlessly studying the sky. A child learns to walk through falling, not through waiting until balance becomes perfect. Life itself unfolds through participation. But the fearful mind wants guarantees before movement. It says, I will begin once I know for sure I will succeed. Yet life has never offered that kind of certainty to anyone. Even wise people step into unknowns. Even strong people feel fear. Even peaceful people sometimes begin things with shaking hands. This is important because many people secretly believe fear means they are not ready. But fear is often simply proof that something matters deeply to the heart. The Buddhist path does not ask you to eliminate uncertainty before acting. It teaches you how to move gently with uncertainty still present. That changes everything. Because suddenly, courage is no longer the absence of fear. Courage becomes the willingness to remain present while fear exists. Many people waste years trying to become emotionally invincible before beginning their lives. They think they must fully heal before loving again, fully understand themselves before taking action, fully remove anxiety before speaking honestly, fully solve their insecurities before being seen. But human beings are rarely fully resolved before important moments begin. A person may still feel afraid while starting over, still feel uncertain while changing direction, still feel wounded while learning to trust again, still feel imperfect while stepping into meaningful work. This does not mean they are failing, it means they are human. The fear of being unready often comes from perfectionism disguised as caution. The mind says, "You need to become more before you deserve to begin." But this creates endless delay because perfection constantly moves further away. There is always another skill to master, another fear to remove, another flaw to fix, another reason to postpone action, and eventually the person becomes trapped inside preparation itself. Buddhism gently interrupts this cycle by bringing awareness back to direct reality. What if readiness is not a feeling you wait for? What if readiness grows through the act of showing up imperfectly? This question softens something deep inside the anxious mind. Because many people are secretly exhausted from trying to become flawless before allowing themselves to live honestly, the Buddhist understanding of impermanence changes the entire relationship with readiness. Since life constantly changes, complete preparation becomes impossible anyway. You cannot fully prepare for every conversation, every transition, every heartbreak, every opportunity, every season of existence. Life moves too unpredictably. Bodies change unexpectedly. Relationships evolve unexpectedly. Circumstances shift unexpectedly. And because of this, waiting for total certainty often means waiting forever. The mind believes preparation will eventually remove vulnerability completely, but vulnerability is woven into being alive itself. To love is vulnerable. To begin is vulnerable. To trust is vulnerable. To create is vulnerable. To be seen honestly is vulnerable. There is no fully armored path into meaningful living. This realization may sound frightening at first, but eventually it becomes liberating. Because if vulnerability cannot be removed completely, then perhaps you no longer need to delay your life trying to eliminate it first. You can begin while still human. Many people think spiritual growth means becoming fearless. Buddhism teaches something more compassionate. Spiritual growth often means becoming less controlled by fear, even when fear still visits the mind. Fear may appear, uncertainty may appear, doubt may appear, but awareness allows you to continue moving gently without surrendering your entire life to hesitation. This is deeply important because hesitation slowly becomes identity for many people. A person starts seeing themselves as someone who almost begins, almost speaks, almost changes, almost lives fully, but always waits slightly longer, and over time the nervous system becomes conditioned toward avoidance. The mind learns that postponement feels safer than movement. Yet postponement has its own hidden suffering: regret, stagnation, emotional numbness, the painful feeling of watching life pass while remaining psychologically stuck at the doorway. Buddhism does not force people violently into action. It teaches mindful participation, one breath, one step, one honest movement forward. The mind often imagines beginnings must be dramatic, but many meaningful transformations begin quietly. One difficult conversation, one moment of honesty, one application submitted despite fear, one boundary spoken, one morning of getting out of bed after grief, one act of trust after disappointment. These small acts matter because they slowly retrain the mind away from endless hesitation. The fearful mind says, "You are not ready." Presence says, "You are here." That difference matters more than people realize, because readiness is often discovered inside the moment itself, not before it. A person giving a speech may feel terrified beforehand, then slowly settle once they begin speaking. A person entering a new chapter may feel uncertain until they start living it. A person learning to trust again may feel afraid until real connection begins softening the fear naturally. Action often teaches the body what endless preparation never could. That survival is possible. That imperfection is survivable. That mistakes are survivable. That uncertainty itself is survivable. Many people who fear being unready are also secretly afraid of being seen unfinished. They believe they must appear polished before stepping forward. They hide their confusion, hide their fear, hide their learning process. But Buddhism deeply honors unfinishedness. The lotus flower does not bloom because the mud disappeared first. Growth itself is messy. Human becoming is messy. Healing is messy. Awakening is messy. And much suffering comes from trying to appear spiritually or emotionally complete before life naturally shapes you through experience. Some people wait to become more confident before speaking honestly. But confidence often grows through honest speaking. Some wait to become more peaceful before meditating. But peace often grows through practicing meditation while restless. Some wait to feel worthy before accepting love. But worthiness often deepens through receiving genuine love imperfectly. The mind keeps placing readiness before experience, when experience itself is often what creates readiness. This is why Buddhist practice focuses so much on direct engagement with life rather than endless conceptual thinking. You can think about swimming forever, but eventually the body must touch water. And touching water changes understanding completely. There are truths life only teaches through participation. No amount of preparation fully teaches love before loving. No amount of planning fully teaches courage before risk. No amount of theory fully teaches presence before actual living. The fear of being unready also creates constant self-monitoring. The person watches themselves excessively. Am I healed enough, wise enough, strong enough, productive enough, spiritual enough? And this constant evaluation creates deep tension because the person never fully relaxes into authentic movement. They are too busy checking whether they deserve movement first. Buddhism gently loosens this obsession with self-measurement. The practice becomes simpler. Breathe, notice, return. Take the next step available, not the perfect step, the real one. This simplicity can feel surprisingly emotional because many people have spent years carrying the impossible burden of trying to fully perfect themselves before participating in life. The nervous system becomes exhausted from all the self-monitoring, all the hesitation, all the internal waiting. Eventually the heart quietly asks, "How much longer must I remain paused before I am finally allowed to live?" This question matters deeply, because some people postpone themselves so long that they begin losing connection with desire itself. They stop dreaming honestly because dreaming activates fear. They stop trying because trying risks disappointment. They stop opening because openness risks pain. Avoidance becomes emotional safety. But emotional safety built entirely on avoidance eventually becomes loneliness. Buddhism teaches the middle path between reckless impulsiveness and fearful paralysis. You do not need to rush blindly, but you also do not need to imprison yourself inside endless preparation. You can move slowly and still move. You can move carefully and still move. You can move while afraid and still move. This is the wisdom of embodied courage, not dramatic courage, not loud courage, quiet courage, the courage to remain present while uncertain, the courage to begin while unfinished, the courage to take one real step without demanding guarantees from life first. Many people secretly believe everyone else feels more prepared than they do. But most human beings enter important moments without full certainty. Parents become parents without fully knowing how. Artists create before fully believing in themselves. Teachers teach while still learning. Hearts love while still carrying old scars. No one fully masters life before living it. The mind only creates this illusion because it wants emotional control before vulnerability begins. But vulnerability cannot be removed from meaningful existence. To be alive is to meet uncertainty repeatedly. This realization can either terrify the mind or free it. Buddhism uses awareness to transform it into freedom. Because if uncertainty belongs to all human beings, then perhaps you no longer need to treat your own uncertainty as proof of inadequacy. Perhaps uncertainty simply means you are standing honestly inside life itself. There is also deep suffering in constantly delaying action because the body remembers postponed dreams. The heart remembers conversations never spoken. The spirit remembers all the times fear convinced you to remain smaller than your truth. And eventually regret becomes heavier than uncertainty itself. Not dramatic regret always. Quiet regret. The regret of unlived moments, unexpressed love, unattempted possibilities, a life spent rehearsing instead of participating. This is why Buddhist teachings bring attention back to immediacy constantly. Not because the future is meaningless, but because life can only actually be entered now. The mind says, prepare more. Life says, step gently. The mind says, wait until fear disappears. Life says, walk with fear and learn you can survive. The mind says, become perfect first. Life says, no human being arrives that way. There is tremendous healing in realizing that your worth is not dependent on flawless readiness. You are allowed to be learning, allowed to be uncertain, allowed to still have questions, allowed to still tremble while moving forward. The Buddhist path itself is built on practice, not perfection. Practice means repeated return, repeated awareness, repeated willingness to begin again. This dissolves the fantasy that awakening belongs only to people who already have everything figured out. No. Awakening belongs to people willing to return honestly to this breath, this life, this imperfect moment, again and again. The fear of being unready often hides another deeper fear too. The fear that if you truly begin, life will change, and change always involves loss. Old identities fall away, old excuses disappear, old comfort zones loosen. So part of the mind clings to preparation because preparation allows the fantasy of transformation without the vulnerability of actual transformation. Planning feels safer than participation. Dreaming feels safer than risking. Thinking feels safer than beginning. But safety built entirely on avoidance eventually becomes emotional suffocation. The soul wants movement, growth, participation, contact with real life, not endless mental rehearsal. Buddhism does not ask you to destroy fear. It asks you to stop building your entire life around obeying fear. That changes everything, because now fear can exist without becoming the ruler of your choices. You can breathe while afraid, love while uncertain, begin while unfinished, speak while nervous, rest while imperfect, move while still healing. This is freedom, not freedom from vulnerability, freedom from complete imprisonment inside vulnerability. The mind often waits for a feeling of readiness that never fully arrives because true readiness is usually quieter than expected. It does not always feel powerful. Sometimes it simply feels like willingness. Willingness to take the next step. Willingness to remain present through discomfort. Willingness to stop postponing yourself. That is enough. There is deep peace in understanding that life was never asking you to become superhuman before participating in it. Life only asks for honest presence. This breath, this conversation, this attempt, this day. And perhaps one of the greatest spiritual shifts happens when you finally stop asking, "What if I am not ready?" and begin asking, "What if readiness grows through living itself?" Because then the path opens differently, not as a perfect road free from uncertainty, but as a living experience you are finally willing to enter, one imperfect step at a time, one trembling breath at a time, one honest beginning at a time. And maybe true peace begins the moment you realize you were never meant to prepare forever. You were meant to live. And after a person spends years fearing they are not ready enough to begin, another hidden pattern often quietly takes control of their life. They become obsessed with improving themselves before allowing themselves to fully exist. Every flaw becomes a project. Every weakness becomes something to repair. Every emotion becomes something to optimize, control, or eliminate. And slowly, growth stops feeling like care. It starts feeling like rejection. There is a lonely sadness in constantly feeling like you are a problem that still needs solving before you deserve peace. A person wakes up already trying to improve themselves. They study productivity, confidence, discipline, healing, routines, communication, spirituality, appearance, success, emotional intelligence, and endless methods for becoming better. On the surface, it looks admirable, it looks ambitious, it even looks healthy. But sometimes, hidden underneath all the self-improvement is a quiet refusal to simply be with yourself as you are now. This is where self-improvement becomes self-avoidance. Buddhism teaches that suffering often grows from attachment to identity. The mind creates an image of the ideal self and then begins warring against the present self constantly. The current version of the person is treated like an obstacle instead of a living human being worthy of compassion. I need to become calmer. I need to become stronger. I need to become more attractive. I need to become more disciplined. I need to become more healed. The mind keeps creating conditions before allowing self-acceptance, and because perfection never fully arrives, peace remains postponed forever. This creates an exhausting inner relationship where the person constantly monitors themselves. Every interaction becomes self-analysis. Every mistake becomes proof of inadequacy. Every emotion becomes something suspicious that must be corrected immediately. Instead of living, the person becomes trapped inside endless self-evaluation. Buddhism does not reject growth. Growth is natural. Learning is beautiful. Healing matters. Discipline matters. Wisdom matters. But there is a profound difference between growing from love and trying to improve yourself because you secretly believe you are unworthy as you are. One path creates peace. The other creates quiet, emotional violence. Many people enter self-improvement because they are hurting. They feel insecure, lost, rejected, anxious, lonely, or ashamed. So they begin searching for ways to become better. And sometimes this journey genuinely helps them. They learn healthier habits. They become more aware. They become more responsible for their lives. But without noticing it, the mind can slowly become addicted to fixing itself. A person no longer feels alive unless they are improving something. Rest feels unproductive. Stillness feels threatening. Simple existence feels insufficient. There must always be another problem to solve within themselves. And because of this, they never truly arrive. This is one of the hidden dangers of endless self-improvement culture. It teaches people to constantly chase another version of themselves without ever learning how to sit compassionately beside the person already here. The mind says, "You are almost enough." But almost enough is still suffering. Buddhism teaches radical awareness of the present self, not endless obsession with becoming someone else. Awareness means seeing clearly without hatred. seeing your fear without becoming consumed by it, seeing your flaws without turning yourself into an enemy, seeing your wounds without believing they remove your worth. This changes the entire emotional atmosphere inside a person, because many people are internally cruel to themselves in ways they barely notice. They speak to themselves harshly, judge themselves constantly, compare themselves endlessly, withhold rest from themselves, withhold compassion from themselves, and then they call it motivation. But fear-based self-improvement creates nervous system exhaustion. The person never feels emotionally safe inside their own mind because the mind constantly demands another upgrade before allowing peace. This is why some people become deeply successful externally, yet still feel internally restless. Achievement did not solve the deeper wound because the wound was never only about success. The wound was the belief that they must constantly become more before deserving love, rest, and presence. The Buddhist path gently interrupts this belief, not by encouraging passivity, but by asking something deeply uncomfortable. What if you stop treating yourself like a constant problem to repair? This question can feel terrifying for people whose identity depends on endless self-fixing, because many people secretly fear that self-acceptance will make them lazy. They think if they stop criticizing themselves, they will stop growing. But self-hatred is not the only fuel for transformation. Compassion can also create growth. In fact, growth rooted in compassion is often more sustainable because it does not constantly attack the nervous system. A tree grows because it is nourished, not because it screams at itself. Yet many people try to force themselves into healing through inner violence. They shame themselves for being anxious, shame themselves for being emotional, shame themselves for still struggling, shame themselves for not improving fast enough. And all this pressure creates deep emotional fatigue. The heart becomes tired of constantly being treated like unfinished machinery instead of a living human experience. Buddhism teaches that awareness itself transforms things naturally. You do not always need to violently attack your patterns. Sometimes you need to notice them gently, sit beside them, understand them, bring compassion into them. The goal is not to erase your humanity. The goal is to stop being unconscious inside it. This is a major difference, because many people approach healing as if they are trying to delete every imperfect part of themselves before life can begin. But human beings are not machines built for flawless optimization. They are living beings shaped by joy, grief, confusion, memory, tenderness, fear, hope, longing, uncertainty, and impermanence. Trying to become emotionally perfect before allowing yourself to live creates endless suffering. There will always be another insecurity, another weakness, another fear, another unfinished area. If peace depends on total self-perfection, peace becomes impossible. This is why Buddhism places such deep emphasis on acceptance, not passive resignation, but honest acceptance of reality before transformation begins. You cannot heal what you refuse to face compassionately. You cannot grow wisely while constantly rejecting yourself. Some people have spent so long trying to improve themselves that they no longer know who they are without a project. They no longer know how to simply sit quietly without evaluating themselves. Even meditation becomes another performance, another thing to master, another identity to achieve. The ego quietly turns spirituality itself into self-improvement obsession. I must become more awakened, more peaceful, more disciplined, more detached. And again, the person postpones peace until another future version of themselves arrives. This is why Buddhism constantly returns to presence instead of identity construction. The point is not becoming spiritually impressive. The point is becoming aware enough to stop abandoning yourself every moment. That is much more difficult than collecting self-improvement techniques, because true presence removes distraction. And without distraction, people often discover how harshly they have been treating themselves internally for years. Some people cannot rest because they feel guilty whenever they are not improving. Some cannot enjoy success because they immediately focus on what still needs fixing. Some cannot receive love because they believe their current self is still too broken. This creates a life where nothing is ever fully enough. Not because life lacks goodness, but because the mind keeps postponing worthiness. Buddhism gently dissolves this postponement by teaching that awareness itself already contains wholeness, not perfect wholeness, human wholeness, the kind that allows room for imperfection without turning existence into failure. There is tremendous healing in realizing that you are allowed to grow without hating who you currently are. You are allowed to improve without rejecting yourself, allowed to heal without treating your wounds like proof of worthlessness, allowed to evolve without turning your life into an endless emergency project. This changes how the nervous system experiences growth. Growth stops feeling like punishment. It begins feeling like care. The body softens, the mind slows down, the heart no longer feels constantly attacked from within. And this softness creates something many people secretly need more than endless improvement: safety, emotional safety inside themselves, because a person can survive many difficult things externally, but constant internal war eventually becomes unbearable. Many people are exhausted not only from life, but from themselves, from the endless inner commentary, the endless fixing, the endless comparison, the endless pressure to become more. The Buddhist path offers relief by teaching people how to sit beside themselves honestly instead of constantly running toward another identity. This does not mean giving up on growth. It means no longer turning growth into self-rejection. A person may still practice discipline, still learn, still change habits, still build a better life, but the emotional energy changes completely. The inner voice becomes kinder, more patient, more understanding. Growth begins flowing from care instead of shame. This distinction matters deeply. A person who grows from shame constantly feels behind. A person who grows from awareness still experiences challenges, but they do not feel fundamentally at war with themselves every moment. Modern self-improvement culture often creates impossible standards. Wake earlier, achieve more, become mentally stronger, be more attractive, be more productive, heal faster, optimize constantly, and while some advice may be useful, many people quietly absorb the message that their natural human state is never enough. This creates chronic inadequacy. Even rest feels guilty because resting interrupts optimization. Even joy becomes transactional. What have I achieved to deserve this? But Buddhism teaches that life is not only about becoming more efficient. It is also about awakening to the sacredness already present inside ordinary existence, this ordinary breath, this tired body, this imperfect mind trying to survive another day. There is compassion in seeing yourself clearly without immediately trying to turn yourself into another person. Some people have forgotten how to simply be, not improve, not perform, not compare, just be. And this forgetting creates enormous suffering because the person loses contact with direct aliveness. They become trapped inside endless self-construction. But identity itself is fluid. Buddhism teaches that the self constantly changes. Thoughts change, emotions change, desires change, bodies change, roles change. Nothing remains fixed. So building your entire piece around becoming the perfect version of yourself creates endless instability because the mind keeps chasing a moving target. Awareness offers something more grounded. Instead of endlessly asking, How can I become better? Awareness sometimes asks, can I fully meet myself honestly right now? That question opens a completely different doorway, because many people secretly do not know how to be with themselves unless they are fixing something. Silence feels uncomfortable, stillness feels threatening, presence feels unproductive. The mind constantly seeks another self-improvement project to avoid direct contact with unresolved emotions underneath. This is why self-improvement can become self-avoidance. A person may obsess over routines while avoiding grief, obsess over discipline while avoiding loneliness, obsess over productivity while avoiding self-worth wounds, obsess over becoming better while never learning how to love themselves gently. The fixing becomes a distraction from deeper emotional intimacy. Buddhism slowly removes these distractions, not cruelly, patiently. You begin noticing how often the mind delays self-acceptance, how often it says, I will finally deserve peace after more healing, more achievement, more transformation. But awareness interrupts the sentence. It asks, what if this moment also deserves compassion? That changes healing profoundly, because healing rooted in self-rejection often becomes another form of suffering. The person constantly chases freedom while internally recreating emotional violence through endless criticism. True healing softens the inner relationship first, not by pretending problems do not exist, but by removing unnecessary cruelty from the process. You can acknowledge your mistakes without destroying yourself. Acknowledge your fears without calling yourself weak. Acknowledge your wounds without believing they make you unlovable. This balanced awareness creates real transformation because the nervous system no longer feels constantly threatened from within. Many people think harshness creates discipline, but harshness often creates burnout, avoidance, anxiety, and numbness. Compassion creates sustainability because the person no longer needs to escape themselves constantly. There is also tremendous grief hidden inside endless self-improvement. Grief for all the years spent believing you were not enough yet. Grief for all the moments you withheld love from yourself. Grief for all the times you turned your own humanity into an enemy. Some people spent decades trying to become worthy instead of realizing they were already worthy of compassion while imperfect. This realization can feel heartbreaking and relieving at the same time, because suddenly the endless chase softens slightly. The nervous system no longer needs to run constantly. The heart no longer needs to prove itself every second. Life becomes less about constructing the ideal self and more about honestly inhabiting the present self. This changes ordinary existence completely. You stop turning every flaw into catastrophe, stop turning every emotion into failure, stop treating yourself like unfinished machinery. You begin breathing more naturally, resting more honestly, living more gently, not because you stopped growing, but because growth no longer depends on rejecting yourself first. This is one of the deepest forms of Buddhist wisdom. The path is not about becoming superhuman. It is about becoming awake enough to stop abandoning yourself in the middle of being human. Awareness replaces endless self-judgment. Presence replaces endless self-monitoring. Compassion replaces endless self-punishment. And from this, softer ground, real transformation becomes possible, not transformation driven by desperation, transformation driven by truth. The truth that you do not need to become another person before you deserve your own kindness. You do not need to fully heal before you allow yourself rest. You do not need to erase every flaw before you belong inside your own life. This moment already contains a human being worthy of care, even unfinished, even uncertain, even still learning. And perhaps true peace begins the moment self-improvement stops being an escape from yourself and becomes an act of gentle love toward the life already here. Maybe the greatest tragedy is not that life is uncertain. Maybe the greatest tragedy is spending your whole life trying to prepare for uncertainty, while missing the only moment you were ever truly given. You waited to feel ready. You waited to feel healed. You waited to feel confident. You waited for more money, more success, more approval, more clarity, and more proof that it was finally safe to begin. But while the mind kept saying, "Not yet," life kept moving. And that is the lesson Buddhism keeps bringing us back to. Life is not waiting at the end of perfect preparation. Life is not hiding behind the future version of you. Life is not something that begins after fear disappears, after pain ends, after every problem is solved, or after every part of you becomes polished enough to be seen. Life is this breath, this body, this ordinary day, this unfinished moment that keeps asking for your attention. You have seen how preparation can become a hiding place, how chasing your future self can make you abandon the person you are now, and how waiting for the perfect moment can quietly become another form of craving. You have seen how postponed joy teaches the heart that happiness is always later, how preparing for pain can blind you to beauty, and how living 3 steps ahead exhausts the body with problems that have not even happened yet. But the path back is not complicated. It is gentle.